And Ms. McKenzie, if you're going to go by the sequence of public commenters that I provided, then I can kind of look ahead and find the next person out of a rather large number of attendees. Thanks.
Perfect. I will do that. Looks like they're all under the same agenda item, so that should be very easy to do.
Hello, this is the interpreter. Do you know if any of the commenters might be Spanish speakers?
I don't have a way to know that for sure. I can say that everyone wrote what item that they want to speak under, and everyone wrote in English, but that's the only context clues I have. So unfortunately, I am not sure. I can sort of say at the beginning that if they need translation services, just to let us know, perhaps.
Okay, I mean, it worked out last time, so it should be okay this time.
Yes, I think we'll make it work.
Okay.
Can I get an audio check from Emily Lewis, please?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can we get an audio check from Brenda Stevens and Carrie Doyle?
Can you hear me now?
I'm here.
I can hear both of you.
All right.
And Ms. Hauser, we got you earlier, yes?
Yes, you did.
Ms. Dubason, we get a audio check, please?
Yep, how's that?
Fantastic. Dr. Felder, can we get an audio check, please? Sounds good.
Okay, we'll be starting in just a moment. Just getting all of my screens organized. Okay, are all of our board members here? Ms. Stevens, Ms. Doyle, Ms. Smiley, Mr. Atherton, Ms. Moore, Ms. Hauser. Okay, looks like we are ready to begin. So good evening, everyone. Tonight is Monday, July 20th, and I am calling this work session to order. The Orange County Board of Education pledges to our families, students, staff, and the greater community to conduct our business in a courteous and productive manner, showing respect for fellow board members, staff, and citizens. The board asks its citizens to conduct themselves with the same courtesy towards school personnel, all staff members, and each other. As per board policy, Robert's Rules of Order will be used to conduct meetings, and a moment of silence will be observed before we begin our business. As tonight is a board work session, our time for public comments will be after the presentation of each agenda item for which someone has signed up to speak. Tonight, I want to begin this time we're sharing by acknowledging that Orange County Schools educates our students on the traditional land of the Occaneechi Band of the Sapani Nation. Hillsborough and its surrounding areas have a difficult history of colonization, slavery, segregation, and is still grappling with the detrimental effects of racism. I want to recognize that residents of this land over time have experienced human atrocities, destructive hurricanes and floods, the flu pandemic of 1918, and many periods of civil unrest. I invite everyone to lean into our humanity as we face the challenges of the coming school year. This crisis transcends our school district and will require new solutions, generosity of spirit, and deep concern for our neighbors. As we consider our individual roles in helping to meet the needs of every student and family in our district, we will have a moment of silence before we begin our work. Thank you for that. Do I have a motion to adopt tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Ms. Smiley Is that a second from you, Mr. Atherton?
Yes, it is.
Wonderful. Ms. Stevens? Ms. Smiley?
Yes.
Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Ms. Hauser?
Yes.
Ms. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Atherton?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Our agenda has been adopted. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion from Ms. Stevens to approve the consent agenda and a second from Ms. Smiley. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Ms. Hauser?
Yes.
Ms. Doyle?
Yeah.
Mr. Atherton?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Our consent agenda has been unanimously approved. Let's see what is next. So the first action on our agenda tonight is authorization for superintendent to approve necessary actions over summer break. So I will turn this over to Dr. Felder.
Thank you, Mrs. McKenzie. This request is similar to the authority that was granted at the one of the meetings last week, and it's to get to approve necessary actions over summer break and necessary things such as related to any number of things on any hiring needs, any needs with regards to, that would be necessary to keep the district moving in an effort to ensure that we are ready to go at the beginning of the year. So August 17th, the date that we're scheduled for students to return, albeit via Plan C. So it just covers a number of things. I understand this is a typical normal request at this time every school year for the superintendent to have the authority to make the necessary and approve the necessary actions. And the next meeting is not until August 10th for the board.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion from Ms. Smiley and a second from Ms. Stevens to approve the authorization of superintendent's ability to approve necessary actions over summer break. Mr. Atherton?
Yes, I assume that's within financial availability.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you.
Ms. Doyle?
Yes.
Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. We have unanimously approved this item. The next item on our agenda for this evening is the contract for purchase of online curriculum. And it has been called to my attention that we actually do have one comment. So we will, I will turn this over to Dr. Felder and we will have one comment from the public before we begin our board discussion.
So this item, the next item, contract for the purchase of online curriculum, actually Dr. Dawson is going to lead the discussion for this item.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Felder, and thank you, Chair McKenzie and Vice Chair Stevens and board members. We would like your approval of the contract with our vendor, Edmentum, in the amount of, sorry, I too am in the amount of $435,257 for the unlimited number of seats for 6 through 12 in the courseware, as well as unlimited seats for the K through 5 curriculum. And that also includes the supplemental resources of Exact Path and Study Island, unlimited for all students.
Thank you, Dr. Dawson. We will now take our public comment from David Heilman.
He is now unmuted.
Thank you. Mr. Heilman, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So when I was reading the agenda item, I read that there will be a seamless transition into using this new program. I was wondering how that would be executed for the CTE classes that require more of a hands-on, such as some of the Ag Mech classes or even the band classes that need to be, that really should be present while you're doing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heilman. Typically, the board does not respond to public comment in this form, but I will make sure that someone reaches out to you tomorrow and answers your questions specifically. Is there any discussion from the board at this time? Mr. Atherton?
I'd just like to say, one, I'm glad to see the SLAs are in this contract, so we'll be able to ensure the service is available at all times. So thank you, staff, for making sure that was included.
Is there any other discussion from the board? Otherwise, I will accept a motion.
Motion to approve the contract.
Can't.
I have a motion from Ms. Smiley and a second from Ms. Stevens. Ms. Doyle?
Yes.
Ms. Hauser?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens? I see you mouthing yes. Mr. Atherton?
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes. Our next item is funding for summer teacher professional development stipends. Dr. Felder?
Thank you again. So this is a request for funding, specifically $71,500 to provide a $100 stipend for our 491 teachers, and also for $8,500 for our 64 10-month certified staff, and that's $71,500 includes FICA and retirement. And then this request is being made in an effort to give them a head start. So we know that this is a very atypical year. We're in the midst of a pandemic. We are starting school in a way that we've never, ever in the history of this school district started school remotely. And there are lots of things that teachers and staff will need to know and be able to do in order to hit the ground running on August 17th. And while, yes, they have 3 pre-service days, but I can tell you as a former teacher, principal, whether it's 3 days, 5 days, I don't think I've ever had more than that. It's never enough. Just in normal circumstances, given all the things we have to do, we tend to jam pack and cram in as much into those days as we possibly can. We can't do that this year. And so what we are proposing is that while while these are required professional development, so teachers will have to take them, if we can assist them in taking them. And so by providing 491 teachers the option of taking one of the professional developments, and it's the one related to online teaching, to provide them with a $100 stipend to take it before school starts. Now, again, it's required. They're going to have to take it sooner or later, but to take hand by offering a stipend of $100. And then we have our 64 10-month certified staff that we want to bring back early and facilitate a trainer of trainers. So train them to go back and be able to provide the training at their school around the new online curriculum. So this request was revised and is actually less than what we originally were requesting. And so the request is for $71,500 to, again, be able to give our teachers and our staff a running start for this school year.
Thank you, Dr. Felder. I appreciate that this recommendation has come to us. Ms. Smiley?
And so Dr. Felder, just what you're saying is teachers, we only have 3 days of professional development for them. If we can get them to knock this out earlier, you can cover more content on those 3 days.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm saying that. And I'm also saying, so I have the knowledge now, because I know what some teachers are doing anyway. They're starting to plan, and they can be in a better position to plan and be ready for August 17th if we give them this running start now. So.
Is there other comment or questions from the board? Mr. Atherton?
Yeah, Dr. Felder, I think this is key, given we're making such a transition from the remote learning to the 2.0 to the virtual learning. You know, there's lots of questions we've been getting from teachers and concerns and families wanting to make sure we're ready and that it's going to be a good experience. So I think this is a great way for us to help ensure that we are ready for the 17th when we start. So I am in support of this.
Are there any additional, Ms. Hauser?
I just, and I don't really know the economics that well of how this works. But we're saying 3 days for a $100 stipend, and I was curious if that's enough, especially with all the other work that we're asking our teachers to do.
Just
May I ask a clarifying question? Ms. Hauser, are you thinking that the $100 is for 3 days, the 3-day pre-service?
Well, I'm not sure what I thought the $100 was to encourage them to do this professional development before school starts.
It is. And I can tell you that there are probably teachers who would do it without it, but I think it is yeah, I can assure you they will, because they want the information. They are thinking next year now. And so by providing the $100, and sure, I mean, it is a small token, but it is a token nonetheless. And actually, Mrs. Rath, if my memory serves me correctly, the around 100, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Ms.
just a clarification, if I could, just to clarify, this isn't payment for the 3 days, Ms. Hauser. That's already part of their contract, right? But this is for the earlier training that they would take.
Got it. So this is all right. So let me just make it simple. is, I don't know how you support our teachers through what we know they've been going through for the last couple of months. And if $100 is it, that's great. And if it's not enough, I would like to hear that. Well, I would be open to it being more. I just don't know what the right number is. I'm just opening the door of is it enough?
Is there any other discussion from the board?
Motion to approve?
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Atherton and a second from Ms. Smiley to approve professional development stipends that are being requested. Ms. Stevens,
Yes.
Ms. Smiley,
Yes.
Ms. Moore.
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Ms. Hauser,
Yes.
Ms. Doyle, and Mr. Atherton.
Yes.
Motion passes. Our next item is our reopening schools update. We have lots of public comment, and we will take that after the presentation before the board begins our full discussion.
So good evening, Board Chair Mrs. Kennedy, Board Chair Mrs. Stevens, and to the entire board. Tonight, staff and I are going to provide an update on the district's reopening. So let's look at the outcomes.
Dr. Felder, I'm so sorry to interrupt you.
Yes.
You're breaking up pretty badly, so I'm wondering if you cut off your camera, if that would make it a little bit more clear for us. And also just want to remind board members that if you're not speaking to please mute yourself. Okay, thank you.
Sure. Yes, okay.
So far, so good.
All right. So do you want me to start from the top or just?
I think starting from the top would be great.
Okay. So good evening, Mackenzie, Vice Chair, Mrs. Stevens, to the board. Tonight, staff and I are going to provide an update on the district's reopening effort under C. Next slide, please, Mr. Jones. So as you can see from outcomes for tonight's session, it's a pretty robust agenda. And working hard and provide an update on, and then the next slide we'll get at some decisions that we need from the board. But there are 9 major outcomes. And so the outcomes for tonight include, by the end of the session, we want to share highlights from the most recent family and staff surveys. We want to provide you with an update with regards to Plan C, B, and A in terms of how they compare from a student learning perspective, and giving an opportunity to review sample schedules. We want to provide you with information about how parents can support remote learning. We understand that there are questions regarding how much time will parents need to support their children during remote learning. And so, well, we'll give you more information about that. We also want to give you an opportunity to hear from teachers and staff who are currently facilitating remote instruction through our programs. And also have reviewed with you the critical PD, professional development timeline. Another outcome for tonight's meeting is to provide an overview of how the academic needs of students in our special populations will be addressed via remote learning. We want to provide you with an update with regards to technology distribution. We have a timeline to share with you, give you some information about open house and orientation. that will occur K to 12. We're going to give you, hope that you would have given us feedback on some supervised learning labs. So we will define those for you and ask for your feedback. We're at a place that we can't move forward with further exploration until we've heard. We also, well, in health protocols. So in Friday's weekly update, you receive update on protocols as they across the board. On Plan C, and you have that we identified for determining when to shift to Plan B. And so tonight we are pleased to have Ms. Stewart, the Director of Orange County Department of Health and Human Services, joining us tonight for this discussion. Last but not least, we want to share with you a campaign that we are undertaking to help ensure we get back to our classrooms in our brick and mortar buildings, which is what we all ultimately desire to achieve. So those are outcomes for tonight's meeting. Next slide, Mr. Jones. That are a few decisions. These would be the decisions. We need a decision with regards to NC for first quarter and schedules. We need decisions regarding the supervised learning labs, which you'll hear more about, and the ability to, in the usage of Orange County facilities, not staff, if needed, to support the supervised learning labs. And you will also be asked to give your feedback and decisions regarding proposed metrics to monitor the review of the indicators that we will use to shift to Plan B. And so those are the decisions that are needed tonight. Any questions about what we propose to do tonight or the decisions that will be needed from the board tonight?
I don't see any.
Okay, so with that, I am going to turn things over to Mr. Jason Johnson, our Executive Director of Student Support Services and School Improvement, and he will share highlights from the most recent surveys that were administered to families and our staff. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Dr. Felder. Good evening, Board Chair, Ms. McKenzie, Vice Chair, Ms. Stevens, and the full board. I hope everyone is doing well. Over the last week, we have given 3 surveys as a district. We gave a family survey, a certified teacher survey, and a classified staff survey. The family survey was released to parents and families on July 13th with an end date of July 21st. As of yesterday, we've had 5,221 responses to the survey. One thing to note from the parent survey is that 42% of our families prefer an all virtual program for a return to school. Also, 34.9% of our families will need bus transportation for when we decide to return to school. We also realize that this number may change as our family circumstances change. The certified staff survey opened July 16th and it closed July 19th. As of yesterday, we had 365 responses. For this survey, 86% of teachers that said they needed extra technology support mentioned that they needed webcams, document cams, and or just a better computer. Also linked into this PowerPoint is a survey that was given by one of our teacher leaders who works in the district. And this survey has approximately 360 responses. And of those responses, 82% of respondents recommended working remotely until COVID-19 condition changes. The classified staff survey opened July 16th and it will close tomorrow, July 21st. When classified staff was asked a question, what questions or concerns do you have about returning to work, which was an open-ended question, 50% of classified staff had concerns about safety. 28% of the classified staff are concerned about their employment status and finances. Once all the surveys are closed, we will make sure to give the board access to the survey data. If there's not any questions at this time, I will turn this presentation over to Deputy Superintendent Dr. Dawson, where she will begin discussion about online learning.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Good evening again. Before I start, to provide an update for all of the work that our staff has been working on, I just wanted to go over some key words and terms, because it can get confusing because we're using words in all different ways. And here in Orange County Schools, here are some of the terminology I think that will help us to better understand the different options that we're talking about. So as we know, we're starting all on Plan C, all on online education. And when we talk about online education, we're talking about teaching and learning that's taking place via the internet. So then when we talk about remote learning, what we're talking about are students and teachers physically not present in a traditional classroom environment. And when we are saying the Orange County Schools Virtual Academy, we're talking about the new online extension of our schools that is open to all of our K-12 students. Again, it's not a separate school. It's a program as part of the school that your children attend. And as we know, and we've stated that all of our teachers will be teaching toward the North Carolina state standards. And what these standards are what the students should have learned by the end of a course or a grade. So then how will we do that? Using what is the curriculum? The curriculum, when we talk about curriculum, it's the lessons and the academic content that is taught in the classroom or school. And that may be online or it could be in person. So we have two different types of curriculum that we're going to mention here today. We have our own Orange County School Blueprint curriculum. And this is the curriculum that our own expert teachers have been developing and preparing for both in-person as well as online education. We are in the process of creating that, but we have not fully finished for a year's worth of curriculum. So we will continue to develop our Orange County School Blueprint, as the plan is that next year we will be using our own OCS teacher developed curriculum. So in the meantime, especially because we're all online, we will be using the new OCS online curriculum that, thank you to the board, has just approved to make sure that we're able to purchase and to purchase it in such a way that we have access for every single student, which is vital. So thank you, board, for that support. And again, this is curriculum that is purchased from a company, and the way that Orange County school teachers will use it is to support the curriculum they currently use and teach. So it is not a replacement of, but in support of what they currently use. The online platform, when we speak of the online platform, we're talking about a service that helps facilitate the interaction between the teacher and the student. And in that process, on that platform, we can have synchronous teaching and learning, which would mean that it's happening in real time, or asynchronous, meaning that it is not in real time, and that it could be a recording or a tutorial that's already been uploaded. And the district, our main platform, the online platform that the district uses, supported by and our state Department of Public Instruction, is Canvas. And so that is our online platform that will be used by teachers and students to access their curriculum. And of course, the most important term here are teachers. Teachers are the experts that will determine how we will integrate all of these materials and resources and on the platform to ensure that our students are receiving a customized learning experience in order to be able to demonstrate proficiency in meeting the state standards. So these are some key words that you're going to be hearing tonight as we present. And so we just thought it would be important to kind of help guide, keep us straight on how we're using which term. So if we could please go to the next slide. And we just want to state up front, just so that families, as you are listening, we want you to know while we held 4 information sessions specifically focused on the virtual academy, we will have additional information sessions, and you'll see that we'll have one for our special populations, what remote learning 2.0 is and is not, and for middle and high school band, because we know that, you know, it's a new concept for us for some of our courses, how to move it onto an online platform and online education. And for those who are interested in listening to our past information session on the virtual academy, the recordings are on our district website. So there are 2 sessions, one for K-8 and one for the high school, and we encourage you to listen to those. That will give you more information and details on the virtual academy. Next slide, please. So as we start, we just wanted to show again our transition and what are the differences comparing our different plans. So just as recent as last week, it was decided that for the safety of our students and all of our staff, that we would start the school year all remote, all of us staying at home, doing all of our coursework online, all using the same curricula, which it would be a combination of our teacher's own curriculum and enhanced by the new online curriculum to make sure that our students have access to a quality blended model that will incorporate both in-person and online, synchronous, asynchronous opportunities, but same curricula. And also we will all follow the same schedule per tier. So all of our elementary, middle, and high, we will go Monday through Thursday. And then on Fridays, the beginning of the day in the morning will be for additional tiered support, which is our multi-tiered student support system. And then in the afternoons, continued professional development for our teachers. So again, we're starting all Plan C, all remote, all online. When it is deemed safe to return to in-person instruction, we will then transition to Plan B. When it is that time, those students who want to continue online will do so through the virtual academy. Those who want to return to in-person instruction at the school will proceed in Plan B and then start their transition with alternating weeks, 1 week in person at the school, 1 week online. And then as it gets even safer, we will transition to Plan A, where our students that were in Plan B will return to full-time in-person instruction at the school. And for those students who are in the virtual academy, they will continue all online. So again, we are starting all online, same curriculum, same schedule. We will have the opportunity to transition for Plan B for those who want their children to return back to school in person. And for those families who want their children to continue online, will also have the opportunity to do so. So what we are asking of families when we ask to please make a decision, we are asking a decision around this key question. Do you want your child to return back to school in person once it is safe? If yes, then you are choosing Plan B, which will ultimately transition to Plan A, full-time in-person instruction. If you said, no, I do not want my child to return back to in-person instruction in the school this year, then you are selecting the virtual academy for your student. That is the question and the decision that we've asked our families to make. But please know this, we understand there are a lot of questions and uncertainties. And again, this is not binding. What you choose now is not what you have to live for the rest of the year. As we continue to monitor the progress of the safety, we will have opportunities for our families to say, you know, I would like my child to opt into or out of the virtual academy, or I would like my child to have an option to opt into or out of Plan B. And when we are asking that to take place is certain points in our students' learning to be the least disruptive. So when we're asking for elementary families, we're asking that the decision, if there is a change in what you've decided by tomorrow, that you do so at the marking term to allow teachers and students to finish their unit of study, to finish a grade for that term, and then they can have a smoother transition to the option that you would like to either opt in or out of. For our secondary, middle, and high school, because of the way the coursework is aligned, we are asking that you opt in or out of either Plan B or Virtual Academy at the semester mark, because again, that will allow your child to finish their course, receive their full grade, and then they can transition to the next course. If you know already, that's why we've asked. If later you're changing your mind, we've asked for at least a 2-week notice. Why we have asked for families to let us know by tomorrow is because schools are planning. We're planning and we're trying to make sure that we are creating our class rosters and assigning teachers in such a way that when it is time from all of us that are in Plan C right now to move to either Plan B or the Virtual Academy, that the schools have had an opportunity to create schedules and rosters to try to create the least amount of disruption for the students when it is time for us to start transitioning back to school in person. So that was one of the key questions that we received from our parents. What am I deciding? How do I know what to decide? And so the key question is, again, do I want my child to ultimately return back to school for in-person instruction? If yes, then you want Plan B when it is that time. If no, then I want Virtual Academy. So I hope that helps to clarify the different plans and the transition and the times that we're able to make a decision, and also to change our decisions as we progress throughout the year. If we could please go to the next slide. And so when we're taking a look at, well, if we're having to choose between two options, what's going to be different and what's going to be the same? Will one be better or will one not be better? And so we wanted to make sure that families knew that, again, we're all starting online, we're all using the same curricula. So as we transition to Plan B or the Virtual Academy, remote learning, which would be Plan B, and then OCS Virtual Academy, you'll see here are some key elements of the school experience and the way we function in classes. You'll see that it is the same. The schedule that we will have, regardless of which option you choose, will be the same. It will also incorporate synchronous instruction, asynchronous instruction. It will have a flexible schedule regardless of the path you chose. The technology, we're all starting online. We're all using the laptop. We're all going to class via the online platform. We are all going to sign in on Canvas. From there, we will access the different resources that our teachers will make available once we log on to Canvas. The grading will be the same. And it will be the same as it was last year before COVID-19. So if I was in an AP course that requires, a weighted, that's going to give me a certain number of points versus a course that is not weighted without the extra points, I'm going to get the same. How they calculate my GPA is going to be the same. There will be no change in that. And all of the grading will be the same in the state system that we use, which is PowerSchool. That's the same regardless if you're in Plan B or in the virtual academy. As far as any required state assessments and benchmarks that we have, all of us will have to take those regardless of which program we're in. For attendance will be the same. We will be held accountable, students, for attending class every single day. If we're going to be absent, families, we ask that you communicate with the teacher to let them know, my child will be absent today. That when absent, that you will make up the work that you missed. All of those practices that we had will remain the same, regardless if you're in Plan B or if you're attending the virtual academy all online. Now the curriculum, again, we're all starting on the same curriculum and we will continue on the same curriculum regardless of how you transition. Teachers are going to take the curriculum that they usually and normally have taught, and they will continue to enhance their curriculum with resources that they have. And we've already had resources in the district, but we're giving the teachers additional resource of the new online curriculum because there are a number of courses that teachers are teaching that is only developed for in-person instruction. And so we're giving them access to tools that will help them to make a blended model where they can teach in person, but also have resources online that students can take online. But whatever is being taught in person during Plan B is the same that will be taught in the virtual academy. We will have to make some shifts regardless of Plan B or the virtual academy for courses such as certain CTE courses, like band, like Project Lead the Way, like IBAP. All of those courses the students will have, but we will need to make some adjustments on how we meet the requirements because now we are online. So when we're talking about CTE courses, especially where they require certain hands-on component to it, we will be working with the guidelines of the state because the state also realizes and they also know that there are some CTE courses that we cannot teach the same and hold students accountable the same because even in Plan B, we're not in school in person full time. So we will work with the state to make sure that our students are meeting the guidelines. At the same time, we will also continue to reach back to our online curriculum resources that will allow students to be able to have virtual and online experiences to enhance those courses. Where we can find simulations and opportunities for students to learn through simulations, we will do that. But it will be directly aligned with the state, especially with CTE, because it does have certain requirements from the state. So again, and our teachers are very creative. They will find ways to teach a class like band online, to bring the instruments together while they're doing one-on-one sessions and small group ensembles, that they will find ways to bring the whole band together where you can make that beautiful music all together. So yes, will it require some shifts of how we used to do things? Yes, but that doesn't mean that our students will not have access to the courses that they're registered for. Also, if you're a middle school student and you have signed up for advanced courses, like if you're a 7th or 8th grader and you're already taking Math 1, we would never want to hinder that. Of course, you'll have access to those courses. Of course, students will have access to honors courses. And for students that, the curriculum, the way we provide access, it will still continue to include one-to-one opportunities, small group collaboration opportunities, whole group opportunities. And for our different learners in the specialized supports, just like you were receiving those services when we were in school before COVID-19, you will continue to receive those supports and services. It just how will look and feel different because we are in an online world. But that doesn't mean you won't get those services. You absolutely will. And that's one of the reasons why we've created a schedule for Friday, being that all students will be working asynchronously. And then as teachers have been working with students and they know certain groups that need additional tiered support, those are the groups that we'll pull in on Fridays. And that group will change. There will be some students that, they will understand a unit and not need extra support, but there may be another unit, another week that they're going to need support and they're going to come in on meet virtually on a Friday online for additional support. And then the teachers will be able to continue their development, their reaching back, but their own development and preparation for the students on the Friday afternoons as well. So again, the key takeaway here is that regardless if you have selected Plan B once it's safe, or if you want to continue through Virtual Academy, what the students will be getting in our same curriculum, same schedule, same opportunities for meals. We will set up times when you can go pick up your meals, and families will have access to that as well, regardless of which program. So I hope that this helps to clarify the differences and similarities in the two models. Next slide, please. Okay, so again, please note that these are draft schedules in the sense that this, again, are the core elements of a schedule, but we are asking the schools to take these elements and customize it for their school and their community and their children. But the key pieces that we're asking that they have are, for instance, in elementary, that every morning that you pull the whole class together for an opportunity for the kids to remember that even though you're in this online world, that you still have your friends, that you still have your peers, that you're still learning together with this teacher, and that's an opportunity to check in with each other. Then we're asking for a literacy block where we're going to have deep focus around all of the reading and writing skills, all of the science of reading skills, and then, having opportunities for very interactive, engaging experiences during these times, having frequent breaks, having all of the other subject areas that students would normally receive. You'll see that there are big chunks of time. So for instance, the lunch and office hours, that is an opportunity for families to go to the pickup site and get their children their lunch. And you will see when we take a look at the other two schedules that block of time, we try to make sure there was overlap. So if I'm a parent that has a child in high school and middle, or maybe all three, that there is an overlap time that I can go and pick up meals for all of my kids, regardless of what tier they're in. But at the same time, it could be an opportunity for students to do some independent work, for teachers to pull in one-to-one. Maybe that's when a counselor is touching base with a small group and having a small group session, just counseling session, or teachers having a small group, or maybe students themselves are having a small group session because they're collaborating on a project. And then, of course, all of our content areas are covered, and then an opportunity for additional time for teachers to be able to check in on their students, check online and see how they're progressing in their schoolwork. And if there are families that need to connect with teachers as well, that there's plenty of time that is in that. Now, the key thing here, key takeaway here is this: family, you have the opportunity to follow this schedule every day and have synchronous in real-time instruction from the teachers if you're following the daily schedule. But board members, we have also heard from our families that that's not feasible because they have to work and their children are being dropped off at daycare or, different places with there may be different family members to be watched over during the day, but they don't have the capacity to be playing school, right? So it allows families the flexibility that if you're not able to have your child follow this schedule during the day, that maybe your shift, is you're working and you get home late, or you're going to work late, but you can do some. These sessions will be recorded, and at your schedule that fits your family, you will be able to sit with your child and go through these lessons and help them to make sure that they are receiving the instruction, that they're doing the classwork, and that they are staying caught up with the class. So we've created a model to try to allow as much flexibility for our students, our teachers, and our families. So if we could go to the next slide, we'll see again, similarly, another draft for the middle school. Again, giving teacher planning time and doing the different core requirements, but also they're receiving their specials as well, that there's a required daily student advisory so that again, every single student will be connected with an adult and there will be regular check-ins to make sure they are okay, that they are able to have any questions answered if they're struggling with any work or access to curriculum or having technical issues, that we will always be in touch with the students. Again, if you look at the block of lunchtime, it is connected to the elementary lunchtime. And if we could go to the next slide, you will see that that same block of time with the high schools, or again, around the same time. They're not exact, but they're pretty well aligned enough that there's an overlap of families to pick up food for all of their kids. So again, these sessions are recorded so that they can meet the schedule of the family and the students. But for those who are able to follow this type of a full day schedule, and that will be more synchronous instruction, that this is also available and an option for families as well. So if we could go to the next slide. Okay. And I would like to, I think this one goes to, sorry, our next presenter.
Thank you, Dr. Dawson. So Dr. Gammon, I appreciate it.
Yes, sorry. I'm like, oh, I forgot who I was supposed to pass the baton to. So my apologies. And this
No,
is
no worries.
our Executive Director of Curriculum, Dr. Chris Gammon.
So thank you, Dr. Dawson. To ensure students and teachers are able to maximize the creative opportunities within the remote learning schedules that Dr. Dawson just shared, we recognize that it's vital to partner with parents to provide tools and resources to support student learning during this time. There's a ton of accessible information that's out there to assist parents and guardians with strategies that they can implement to support remote learning. This slide that you see here is simply just highlighting a few of those key tips. Parents can create and designate a learning space at home or another location, and they can associate that area with learning only for the time being. Choosing the right learning space for students when they're at home is a way to empower students to build in that sense of ownership when they sit down to learn or stand up to learn. That minimizing distractions, making sure that all toys, games, etc., are tucked away during those learning hours, those blocks of time that you noticed on the schedules, making sure that there is a set schedule. Our students are so used to being on school schedules and that set routine that trying to keep that schedule as routine as possible is really critical for us moving forward. Also, just an open line of communication. Not only are we going to strive to do that as an organization to our families, but we also ask that our parents would keep that open line of communication with us as well, between child and teacher. And then also just those frequent check-ins, that active checking in the morning, in the evening, and at times that are conducive for parents, just to check on progress, attendance, and ensuring that students are following these schedules as we move forward. So these are just a few tips. We know that there are many more that we will be able to share with our families in the coming days and weeks, and we're looking forward to doing that. At this time, we're going to transition to our next segment. This is Ms. Connie Crimmins, our EC Director, and she has a team of staff presenters that she would like to introduce.
Good evening, board. Thank you for allowing us to speak. You've heard a lot of what this remote learning and virtual academy could look like. I have Ms. Tanisha Williamson, Ms. Suzanne DeCanto, Ms. Christy Mabry, and Ms. Jennifer Kelly to talk about and show you some videos and examples of the work that they have done this summer, so that you and people listening can really see what remote learning could and should look like. This is not by all means the full curriculum of full child's day, but we have chosen a lesson on English language learning, a lesson on social emotional learning, what special services can look like, whether it is special education, whether it is English language learner or AIG, all of those specialized supports looking and how they can support students. And then finally, how administrators who support our teachers, what that could look like and how that enhanced communication can really bring a remote school together. So Mr. Jones, if you could click on the remote learning preview slideshow at the bottom. All right, and I've given you the introduction, so we can jump into slide 2, and Ms. DeCanto, take it away.
Thank you, Ms. Crimmins. Good evening. My name is Suzanne DeCanto, and I have had the privilege of teaching 8th grade ELA at Gravelly Hill Middle School for the past 5 years. I started on this adventure of remote learning in March, and I've learned so much through trial and error, but I know there's still a ton of learning left to do. But I do want to share with you just some possibilities that exist within remote instruction based on my experience. Next slide. Thank you. So I use virtual gallery walks, Flipgrid, and Padlet as ways to display student work, activate student voice, and a way for students to give and receive feedback from their teachers and their peers. And that type of communication really helped maintain our classroom community and could also help establish one in the new school year. I also had a lot of success with being able to meet with students one-on-one to work on oral reading fluency. In a middle school setting, students are usually self-conscious about reading out loud. But remote learning allowed me to share the text on my screen and listen to them practice fluency strategies. And then the last thing I wanted to highlight was my use of Canvas conferences. It was a really great tool for teaching live sessions. Through the conferences, my co-teacher and I were able to maintain a similar environment to what we had when we were in the school building. We both taught lessons, and while one was teaching, another one was answering questions in the group chat box or privately messaging students to check in. We also used the breakout rooms, which allowed students to break off into smaller groups where they felt more comfortable sharing their thinking. And actually, our science teacher, our literacy coach, and my co-teacher all attended most of my classes. So each breakout room had a teacher to help facilitate the discussions. And moving forward, opportunities for students to interact with each other will be so important to establishing and maintaining that sense of community. I'd like to walk you through the components of my virtual lessons. There are a lot of things that came naturally to me as a teacher in the school building, but virtual teaching requires teachers to be even more intentional and thoughtful in the decisions that they make. So my decisions change a lot based on student need, but I'm going to show you the type of thinking that goes into trying to create an effective virtual lesson. Next slide. So the very first thing that I do is I gather some sort of social or emotional data. This on the top left-hand corner, you can see this is an example of a quick stress check that I actually did this morning in a lesson. And it's so important for me to understand where my students are coming from and how they're feeling. I think we naturally do this in the classroom. We can tell right when a student walks in, usually the way that they're feeling. We can pick up on body language and actions that tell us who needs space that day, but we don't really get as much of that in the virtual setting. So it's important that we're still able to gather that type of data and allow it to drive our instruction. I've also just had students, type in the chat box, tell me one word to describe how you're feeling today, just so that I can use that in the way that I interact with them during this session. And then just like in the physical classroom, it's important for students to know exactly what the purpose is and what their role is. Something as simple as, should I be writing this down is pretty distracting in the physical building if students don't know what their role is during a mini lesson or during a small group. And if they don't have the ability to let you know that they have that question through like nonverbal cues, it can distract them maybe for the entire session. So just being really intentional about the things that could possibly distract students and making sure that students know exactly their role and exactly where to find any sort of resources they need, whether it's anchor charts or any sort of graphic organizers. And then the box that says teachers are still humans, I use my document camera to physically still teach my students so they can actually see my hand as I'm writing it out, because I think it's really important for our students to know that their teacher is not a computer and it's not a program. That, teachers in Orange County, we love our students and we're in this with them. And I think it's important for them to be reminded of that. And then I have a clip today to show how it's important to maintain rigor and high expectations in the virtual setting. So if we could open that video. And then if you could just set the time to 17:23 and then stop it at 18:16. So this is a video from a small group session from today, and I just wanted to show how I just pushed a student. What? So it must mean, you said, okay, that either the mom is working all the time or she's gone. Either way, what must that mean for the father?
It's hard for him to raise his daughter.
He probably has like a lot more pressure on him. Okay, you can stop it. Thank you. So at the beginning of the clip, we didn't hear a part, but a student offered some of his thinking. And to be honest, if this were the end of last school year, I probably would just have been very excited with the participation. But I think that as we continue to move forward, it's important to push students and to maintain a sense of rigor and high expectations. And then to end the lesson, I like for students to take ownership of their next step. When we end a mini lesson in class, they go off and they do their independent work, but they don't disappear, right? And I don't disappear. But during remote learning, I want to know exactly what they're doing next because I think it holds them accountable and it also allows me to check in on them later. So the next clip was just a student explaining what her next step was going to be. But I'll just skip that. So I'd like to end by emphasizing the fact that this is just a small, very small glimpse into the decisions that go into virtual instruction. I hope that I did not make it sound simple because none of this is easy work. It has not been easy. But I dedicated hours of time thinking, reflecting, learning different tech tools, and taking advantage of professional development opportunities. And while this experience has been really challenging, if there's anything we know about Orange County teachers, it's that with district support, they're able to adapt to do whatever it takes to serve our students' academic, social, and emotional needs. Next, I would like to hand it over to Christy Mabry.
Thank you so much, Mr. Conto, for your dedicated service to Orange County students.
Thank you, Mr. Conto. Thank you all for having me. My name is Christy Mabry, and I teach 7th grade science at A.L. Stanback Middle School. And so I'm going to share with you how I use social emotional lessons to build a community virtually. And so with teaching summer camp this summer, I was given a group of students that I had never met before. And I was a little nervous about getting to know them and how that would look virtually. So we did a lot of icebreakers. We had some share story time and some trivia and some fun activities. But after that, we moved into the curriculum and I broke them into groups, little small groups. And the first slide shows you one of my small group meetings. And I covered up the students' faces. So you can see that we interact in the chat box. We interact verbally. Sometimes we just do a thumbs up or a thumbs down physically or through the chat box. I tried to build a community by sending encouraging emails. So on the right, you see a picture of emails that I send. Every 2 days, I send emails out based on targets that they've hit within the program we're using. I can see how much time they've spent there and the activities they're progressing through. And I try to find a way to give them a shout out and make it, make the challenges fun for them and push them a little harder to do more. Next slide, please. So last week I did a lesson on perseverance. I had a couple of students that were getting frustrated with the end product of what they were doing in the lesson. And I think it came down to them rushing and maybe not reading thoroughly. So I did a lesson on perseverance and how sometimes when things get hard, we don't want to quit, we want to persevere. And I tried to keep bringing that up in the encouraging emails that I sent. I encouraged them to spend additional time on the activities because they were rushing through. And while I know this is summer school or summer camp, we're calling it, they volunteered to be here. So I want to make sure that they're getting, they're getting something from it, that they're enjoying it, but they're also growing. So I noticed over the weekend when I checked the time that they spent within the program that they had increased about 8 or 9 minutes. So I feel like that lesson naturally lended itself to helping them persevere when things get tough. I had a couple of parents over the weekend concerned that their students were spending too much time on the computer. So today I did a lesson on responsible decision making. And we focused that around setting a goal where you'll have no other tabs open. And for 15 minutes, you'll do the reading activities. And we will try not to multitask. So we went over what it meant to work productively and to set a goal without someone having to remind you, that you just be self-motivated. And then you try to not multitask while you're doing the activity so that there's a greater chance that you will have a higher success rate. So those are ways that I integrate social emotional learning. I just take things that are going on around me, which is what I did in my classroom also, things you notice, things you hear, things you see, and then you just try to, have a conversation and a discussion about it so that you can teach students how to grow. Next slide, please. And my last slide is the summarizing lesson I did today. Very interactive. We did a screen share. We did a virtual share. I wanted to include some answers that I received on the right. So even though this is a virtual school, they still are participating. They're giving great answers. I gave a wait time. My directions were to only click enter when I said go, because I didn't want other folks to read the answers and base their answers off of someone else's. And so I feel like it went well, and I was really happy with it. And this was a lesson that we used from our virtual program that we're using for Summer Jumpstart Camp. And that is all I have to share. I'm going to now bring it along to Miss Kelly. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Mabry. We're grateful for you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jennifer Kelly, and I work with our exceptional children's students at Stand Back, and I'm working in the summer camp program. I have actually found that my job is still quite similar to what I did in the building and what I'm doing this summer. So when we first started camp, I made sure that I pulled every student's individual education plan, and I used the online program diagnostic results to place students in small groups. And I tried to place them in 5 or less, and I placed those students that had like needs. I've designed lessons based on their current level of performance and individual need. So while I may have a 5th grade group of students, some of the skills that we need to go back and target may be 2nd or 3rd grade level skills. And so we've been able to do that in those small groups. I've also provided one-on-one intensive intervention for students who are having difficulty with specific skills. I have one student that I work with one-on-one daily because he in the classroom is in what we would consider a max resource placement. So it means he has specially designed instruction for all 4 of his core content area classes. So this has been difficult for him. So working one-on-one on specific areas of need has really increased his confidence. And I've also seen growth so far, even in his just willingness to participate, especially because he knows it's one-on-one and he feels comfortable and safe making mistakes and pushing through and learning to persevere. I also work with the regular education teachers and share the student diagnostic results with them. I share lessons, I review the students' accommodations and modifications, and I share progress that our students are making with their regular education teachers. And I found that my role is still very similar. I'm kind of that contact and support person for the students and the parents and the teachers. Next slide, please. So we use the goals from the students' individualized education plans and the diagnostic testing to make informed decisions about student instruction. So I'm able to go into a student's IEP, look at their current level of performance, and pull out specific benchmarks that I want to work with my students on. And so you can see below, I had a student who is struggling with comparing and contrasting information. And so we did an activity today that was about bridges. So we read an article about the Dragon Bridge in Vietnam, and we also read an article about the Lego Bridge in Germany. And we compared and contrasted those 2 bridges, which happened to be really interesting if anybody wants to Google those later. And you can also see to the left-hand side, there's the passage about the Lego Bridge. So the students are working on lessons that are at their level of need, and then I'm able to build upon those lessons as they move toward working on grade level. So like I said before, it's very similar to what I've been doing in the classroom with them. And it can even be more specialized as needed. If a student is struggling in that small group, I can pull them and do that intensive intervention, that one-on-one support. And the experience has been extremely positive with those students that have participated thus far in the summer camp. And so I will turn it over to Ms. Williamson, who's going to talk to you about communication.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly, for your dedication. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Well, hello, everybody. So I am here to talk a little bit about family communication and staff communication. I'm Williamson. I am assistant principals at Standback Middle School, and had the opportunity to help connect with the virtual academy and help coordinate the processes that we were going to use and how we were going to connect families and our staff. So on the first slide, know that it has been like amazing to be able to work with different staff in the district and not just with my school, so I can learn how to work with different personalities, learn some different skills from teachers and how they connect with kids. So it's been pretty awesome to do that. It was my goal to ensure that as an administrator, I communicated with the staff regularly, and I did that by attending their virtual classrooms this summer, emailing them, doing personal check-ins, and their whole group meetings. So it was very important that I was a part of the program and building relationships with our families and our students at the same time. So the first slide shows you a Google survey that we sent out in the beginning of this summer to see participation we would get for our online summer. And as you can see, we had over 300 responses for this program, which was really awesome. So we wanted to get some information from them about the student information, their tech needs, and any family information that we can gather from the program. And I will let you know that the survey kept building and building as the weeks went on. So it didn't just stop with week 1. We received responses from students as of Friday to still come into the program. So that was pretty cool. Next slide, please. So this slide here that you're seeing is family connections. So what we did is that we used our Connect Ed app, which allowed me to reach all the families and share information about our summer program and give them my contact information so they'll be able to me by email or by phone. And then just let them know to get excited about what we were getting ready to do summer. We wanted to include some information for them about our expectations, them and from their students, and then make sure to include family food resources, and tech resources. Next slide, please. So as we've been going on with the Summer Academy program, we have had some virtual staff meetings and some weekly training meetings. So the staff and I have met periodically to discuss expectations of the program, train on how to use the program, and also receive some SEL trainings from Kelly Underwood. As we began to explore with our students, we wanted to make sure that we were given some online training of what to do, what it's going to look like, how to connect with students, especially through SEL, because what we found, or what we know for sure, is that we want to make sure that we are continually doing check-ins with our students through this process, because we know that all family situations have been quite different through this time. So as I am visiting classrooms, I am really expecting from my teachers to see check-in processes where that comes from attendance. Today I saw a really cool check-in process with SpongeBob making, I think it was SpongeBob, making all these different faces, and the kids had to write in their name, and then they had to tell which one did they feel like today. Are you slouchy? Are you ready? Are you confused? What is going on? So I really appreciate the teachers are really connecting with SEL lessons throughout this time, and the trainings that we are receiving from the program. Get through the data and figure out how we can support students at all times. Next slide, please. Staff communication. This communicating with staff is very important. So my way to connect with them is through email. So we've had a running email all summer that I just kind of keep connecting with, and if they have questions, we all kind of rotate on that email together. Here you would just see our first summer email that I sent out for our staff, just kind of giving them information. Number one, telling them thank you for joining our program, because we really appreciate them being champions for what was happening this summer, which is really great. And then adding some resources to this document was really great that we learned from the SEL from Kelly Underwood. We gave a sample schedule that we were going to try to follow this summer, even though it changed a little bit, but we just want to make sure that all kids were seen at least 3 times a day in all of the core subjects that we taught, and just some reminders of how the summer would look. Next slide, please. So another way is I wanted to sure that when I noticed something that was going on in our summer virtual program, that I let them know that I was excited about it, right? And we know emojis are like the big thing right now. So I wanted to make sure that if we were Team Awesome, I wanted to let them know we were Team Awesome. If they rocked at something, I wanted to let them know that they were awesome at what they were doing, and to make sure that we gave them few reminders about what to look out for. Another thing that helped us out this summer was making a group log for our diagnostics, and just trying to make sure we keep up with what our students are, who in their groups, and how to get in contact with families. That way, all the teachers involved can have access to that document at all times. Next slide, please. So here's another one. Like, I wanted to be an example for our staff. So we had kids that are the program taking a diagnostic. So it just, I just wanted to know, have you given a shout out to your students today? Because, we all know that this was a voluntary program, and we wanted to make sure that if they made any accomplishments, that we encouraged them and said, you know what, we really appreciate what you did. And not only me giving them giving the students shout outs, I want to make sure that I gave shout outs to the staff and let them know how excited I was about our students being in the program and them taking their time out this summer to learn this program and to be champions for learning as well. So next slide, please. So last but not least, I just want to let you know that even though we did a lot of communicating with our families, it was an expectation of my staff that they met with each student by the end of every week, that they made a family connection every week, whether that be through newsletter, through phone calls, through emails. We just want to make sure that we made a connection with our families. And we also know that the new program that was just approved by the board will also have a parent portal to it this fall. So parents will be able to be connected to the student learning, which is very, very important. And we know it is important for our school to build relationships with families and keep connecting to student learning. So we just want to make sure that our staff understand that even though we're online, whether it be virtual, whether it be remote, and we go back, we want to make sure that we constantly and consistently build relationships with our families so they can stay connected to their child's learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williamson. I've got some emojis to send you tomorrow.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
So everyone, I hope this gives you just a brief snapshot picture of what the what virtual learning and a virtual class can look like. I think some important pieces that were brought up was the feedback. So during the spring, we didn't have that opportunity to give students feedback just because of the circumstances, but now the expectation in order to move instruction and mastery forward is feedback is going to become important. So the way that our teachers are doing feedback. The other thing is that instruction is more in the moment now. So because we have online tools that do diagnostics, that do data crunching, we have this ability to go in and remediate and accelerate and respond instructionally much quicker than I think we did in a more brick and mortar class. And so these tools that are going to be available through the platform that we have will continue to accelerate teachers' ability to intervene early. And the last part I wanted to just mention, and then we can move on, is that we have the ability now to record these lessons, to record what the teachers in class are doing, so that students who may need to miss a class for whatever reason can pick that back up in an asynchronous manner. So again, the flexibility that we have is really going to help our students move forward. So again, I hope this gave you a picture of what remote learning could look like. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kerman.
Oh, and now I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Gammon.
Thank you, Ms. Crimmins. We're going to transition to the next slide, focusing on professional development in our timeline. And just so folks know that we have been hard at work as a C&I team, focusing on our professional development planning over the course of the last several weeks. Our district and curriculum and instruction team, with the support of administrators, teacher leaders across the organization, have all worked diligently to ensure improved outcomes for students and teachers by devising a clear, structured, adaptable, and sustainable professional development plan. Between July 22nd and August 11th, our staff will be afforded a wonderful opportunity to participate in the first 3 installments of a 7-part PD series through the Friday Institute titled Teaching Remotely, a Practical Guide. Through this PD series, we will cover best practices, resources, and strategies to set our remote learning classrooms up for success, while providing plenty of opportunities to brainstorm and share with colleagues. We will be providing specific focus throughout the course on supporting students with limited connectivity and for students with learning differences and other unique needs. These strategies will be focused beyond the COVID-19 crisis and will support staff in bringing remote learning to your classroom whenever it's needed. The course objectives for this initial course that folks will participate in are defining remote learning, establishing norms for remote learning, bringing social emotional learning to remote learning, maintaining connections with students and families, selecting digital content, supporting populations with special needs, and providing feedback and assessment. During the weeks of July 27th through August 7th, a select group of administrators, digital learning coaches, teacher leaders, and district support staff will participate in a train the trainer session focusing on new online curriculum platform. This team will then serve as an on-the-ground support with their respective school communities as we onboard all other OCS staff to the new online curriculum platform during the required teacher workdays on August 12th through the 14th. So as we enter the school year, ongoing teacher support, coaching, and professional development will occur strategically through Friday afternoon sessions that have been built into our schedule, focusing on remote teaching and learning, blended teaching and learning, student engagement, academic feedback, and more. So that's just a snapshot of the next several weeks of our professional development timeline. More information around professional development will be disseminated out to all stakeholders as we move forward. At this time, I will turn it back over to Connie Crimmins to share more information about Plan C for our special populations.
Thank you, Dr. Gaiman.
So good evening again. I'm glad to be back to talk about special populations. So when we talk about special populations, they are listed here. We are referring to students with disabilities, English language learners, students who are academically gifted, and students with accommodations under Section 504. As you can see in the bullet points here is that services will continue to be provided, and it is not and I'll talk about this a little bit more, but there's a shift from what was done in the spring to what we will be doing in the fall. In the spring, we were talking about maintenance, how we could maintain skills for this group of learners so that they didn't come back more behind than when we left. The focus now is for attainment of the goals, whether it's under their IEP, their differentiated education plan, the EL plan, their 504 plan, or for students who are struggling and were in an intervention plan. Those plans need to be continued and growth needs to be accelerated. We have the program under the new online platform that will assist with this, but also our teachers will need to go in and do the small group, do that same type of learning and support that they were doing while we were in school. It is important too that our teachers continue to collaborate with the general education teachers now more than ever, because while we're in this remote learning, we need to be tight in our delivery of curriculum and delivery in supports. Next slide, please. So specifically for special education students, again, there's a shift from the maintenance to the continuing to work towards the growth and attainment of their individual education plan goals. This means that teachers will provide services as close as possible as stated on a student's IEP. We will need to look and revisit that IEP and look at how we can provide services in the remote environment. So for example, a student may have had severe organizational skills when you had paper and pencil, but now that we have a computer, some of that goal may not be as pertinent. Related services, so speech, occupational therapy, physical therapy to the extent possible will be provided. And again, attainment of goals to support the IEP goals and the remote environment. Services can look like, as Ms. Kelly explained, pushing into the general education classroom, pulling out into a small group, pulling out one-to-one, and for our students who are in separate settings, making sure that we have synchronous and asynchronous and the supports needed so that they can continue to grow and learn on their curriculum path. And if students are choosing the virtual academy, the IEP will probably need to be amended to support the services that will be needed in that full remote environment. I know that there's been a lot of questions around special support services, but we are here and it's going to look very similar just in that remote environment. I'd now like to turn it over to Emily Lewis to talk about supports for English language learners.
So good evening. As Ms. Crimmins just said, I'm Emily Lewis. I'm the English Language Development Facilitator for the district. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about what services will look like under remote instruction for our English language learners. Very similar to what Ms. Crimmins said, in the spring, we were really looking at maintaining the language development that students had attained prior to our entering the crisis learning mode. And now we really are going to make a push to make sure that they are continuing to develop and increase their proficiency in English. Currently, we have what is called an LIEP, or a Language Instruction Educational Program, that is submitted to the federal government as part of our Title III grant under our ESSA guidelines. And fortunately, we already have a huge piece of that plan that talks about collaboration between the ESL or ELD specialist and the regular classroom teachers. So I anticipate that our instruction for our English language learners will look similar to what face-to-face instruction would look like, except it will take place in the remote setting. So as you can see here, we will still provide pull-out services for students that maybe are considered our newcomers or within their first 3 years in United States schools. Sometimes we offer pull-out services for those students also that are so close to attaining proficiency on our annual access testing to exit EL status, but just aren't quite there. So we're looking to identify ways that we can support them and kind of get them over that threshold. So we will provide those pull-out services through small groups that will be part of the instructional day. The majority of our English learners already receive services through the co-teaching model, which our teachers all participated in co-teaching training this past school year. And now I'm looking to continue that, making a few adjustments that are needed for remote teaching, for remote learning, and what that co-teaching model may look like from behind a computer screen. So I'm working with a few of our more veteran ESL teachers now on that piece. All information that is provided for learning will be provided in multiple languages. So if we are providing information for families to support their students with their learning, we are already working to have those both videos interpreted into Spanish and written translations translated into Spanish.
We also have our second highest language in Orange County schools with our English learners is Korean. So we, this spring, we're able to contract with a Korean speaking interpreter who has been reaching out to several of our families and helping them understand what is happening in this time of COVID-19. And we look forward to continuing that partnership with him. So we make sure that all of our families are understanding the expectations for their students. And lastly, there is a bullet on here about parent-based communication and training on specific resources will be provided at least in English and Spanish. And if we are able, other home languages that may be represented in our district. You've heard Dr. Dawson talk about the blueprint courses that many of our teachers have been working on over the summer. And our DLCs have been working with them to create a family resource page that includes both written instructions, but also videos, short video clips showing families how they can support students with different tech tools and things like that. So we are in the process of getting some of our bilingual educators to record those also in Spanish. And they are taking into account some of the cultural differences that may need to be addressed when those videos are published. I think our next presenter is Sarah Mail, our facilitator for student talent development.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lewis.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Good evening. My name is Sarah Mail. I'm the Talent Development Facilitator for Orange County Schools. Board members and community members, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak this evening. Received a lot of questions about what AIG services will look like in remote learning. And I just want to assure our board and our families that those services will continue. We will continue to meet the needs of our advanced learners, whether they are AIG identified or students who are nurtured or at potential. We will continue those services. AIG services for remote learning will take place during identified times. There will be small group work throughout the instructional day. Our AIG specialists will provide mini or micro lessons that will be delivered synchronously, but also recorded so that students may access them asynchronously. We will continue to provide enrichment, extension, and acceleration of the content. Our AIG specialists will also collaborate with our classroom teachers to make sure any social emotional learning that lessons that need to take place, they will collaborate with them and they will support that. The AIG specialists will continue to assist with differentiation of materials and content as needed, and will support students and families through providing resources, but also setting up regular communication with our students and families. Throughout this process, we will continue our services for identified students. We will continue nurturing services. We are meeting tomorrow as an AIG team to work out the details of how all of this will work for each specialist and at each school, but we have several things we're going to go over, including how we will continue to identify students for services in remote learning. Thank you, all of the families that have sent in emails. I appreciate those, and I will continue to respond to those. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mail.
And if I could just add, for our students with disabilities, there is going to be an information session on Thursday from 4 to 5. There'll be information on the website and how to access that. And it is specifically geared towards students who are in separate settings, the families who are in district programs. So Ellen Perry-Kaji is going to present on planning for pre-K.
Good evening. My name is Ellen Perry-Kaji. I'm the pre-K program facilitator, and I want to thank the Board of Education and also the Orange County School District for appreciating the fact that our youngest learners here in Orange County schools play an important role. This is an important beginning, whether we are in the classroom or on a computer screen. So thank you for that. We have had a different kind of application process this year. We have received, as of today, 75 eligible community applications. And when I say eligible, I mean that the children will indeed be 4 years of age by August 31st, and that their families are residents of Orange County. I continue to collect applications. We will be, our next step in the process, now that we know where we are headed, is to send an email and letter to the families of the applicants, explaining what Plan C will look like, and then eventually with the hope of moving to Plan B for pre-K. And we will also be doing a telephone survey with these families to see exactly what their situation is currently with their child, if their child perhaps is in a full-time childcare program, if they are still interested in the pre-K program, with it perhaps being, well, with it being online to begin with, and maybe throughout at different points throughout the year. And also about their accessibility to internet and computer devices, so that we have an idea of what that looks like. I will continue to look toward outreach of getting more applications out and available to families. I will be looking toward to the ESL and Family Outreach Coordinator to help me with this, with interpretation, as far as getting information out on the website, social media, and any other kind of media suggestions. We also will continue to supply the Department of Social Services, the Orange County Health Department, local churches, the Gatewood community, and also FSA with applications for parents who would still like to apply. With our Title I funder, one of the requirements is that we do a developmental assessment on all children whose parents have applied for a position. Our primary purpose is to serve children in the community who are at risk or are at risk of starting a little behind. Maybe they haven't been in any kind of child care program and just need a little bit of support. So we need to be doing an assessment. In the past, we have done the Dial 4 assessment, which is a developmental assessment. And we have done 36 of those assessments in early March before we all went home and went online. We have about that many, if not more, to do on applications that have come through. Obviously, a face-to-face assessment is not a possibility at this time, so we are now looking at another approved assessment tool called Ages and Stages 3, which is a parent questionnaire that we will need to be sending out to all families who have applied, and that will determine eligibility in that realm. There are several different pieces of curricula that we use in our pre-K program. One is the creative curriculum, which is a developmentally appropriate curriculum that looks at children on a progression, and the teachers meet children where they are and support them to success at whatever level they are at. With that system, we also use Teaching Strategies Gold, which is our data collection. A new program that we are going to be starting with perfect timing for this situation is called Ready Rosie, which is a family engagement program specifically to work with families online, and it empowers families through video modeling and mobile technology, building these partnerships with families to promote school readiness. So that will be something new that we will be using, and I think very helpful, especially in this situation. We will continue to use Letterland for pre-K. It will be our 3rd year of using that program. It will be our 2nd year of using the Bridges Math program for pre-K. Conscious Discipline is our social emotional learning program that we use, and as always is such an important foundation for building safety and connection with our children, with the teachers and the children, so that the children feel safe and ready to learn. And we will also be using pieces of Reading Eggs, which is a program that is also, I think, used with Edmonton, the Edmonton program. So originally we had come up with an idea for Plan B, and then we have quickly, with the guidance of my amazing teachers, have come up with a plan for C, for pre-K. And the schedule, of course, will evolve as the children settles in and the teachers get to know the children and their strengths and the needs that are assessed. With pre-K, we're looking at a 15-minute increment maximum at one time for children of 4 and 5 years of age. And so we will be incorporating morning meeting, starting with an SEL activity, movement, getting through with some daily routines and rituals. And we may be doing that either in one large group or 2 small groups, depending on the folks we have. We will be incorporating asynchronous activities throughout the day that parents can access upon availability. We will be doing a lot of—
Ms. Kaji?
Yes.
Are we behind a slide? Or are we on the correct slide?
We are on the correct slide.
Okay, I'm so sorry to interrupt. For some reason, you said something that made me think that you had a slide about the schedule. I'm so sorry to interrupt you.
And we can get into that more later as we go on, but we're feeling good about having had the opportunity of doing this online teaching in the spring has really evolved into some wonderful growth for our staff, and just looking at all of the things that we can do to connect and build toward, so that when we see them in the classroom, they will be comfortable and familiar with us. We have family engagement opportunities in mind, both online that will be recorded for teachers as far as program or overview, policies, procedures, that kind of thing. This year especially, there's going to be an emphasis on health and safety guidelines, both through Orange County Schools health and safety reopening, but also through the Division of Child Development and Early Education, which is our licensing unit. We will have opportunities for families to learn about Ready Rosie and create a curriculum, Letterland, Bridges, Conscious Discipline, so that they can support their children. And then we have lots of professional development opportunities around these areas, but also some of the other areas that you have heard about for all of Orange County staff. I am going to now pass it on to Mary Ellen Golnick so she can talk about the EC pre-K remote learning schedules.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry, I'm just jumping right in.
Go for it.
Hi, I'm Mary Ellen Golnick. I'm the Assistant EC Director, and I'm just going to talk quickly about our EC Pre-K separate setting classroom. Those two classrooms are housed at Pathways Elementary. Typically, in those classrooms, we have 8 or 9 students with a range of abilities and that are served by an EC teacher and a pre-K teacher. They have that dual license. Right now, we currently have 9 students between those two classrooms, but we anticipate a very busy summer testing season with so many referrals that were held up a little bit due to COVID-19, but we have begun that testing and we'll be evaluating students within the coming weeks. The pre-K separate setting classrooms will follow the pre-K schedule that Ellen spoke briefly about. Students will arrive at, once we're in the school building, we'll arrive a little bit later than the elementary students to allow for that intake process. But as we're on remote, they will follow a similar schedule. We're also considering for our EC pre-K looking at the possibility of when we take the scheduled time for lunch and recess and even nap time out of the schedule, looking at being able to possibly provide a morning session and an afternoon session that mirror each other, where parents can sign up for one or the other so that they can tend to their school age children at a different part of the day, or if they have younger children where the morning time is very hectic. In the afternoon when the little ones are down for a nap, where a parent can really work with their pre-K students. So we're looking at that and want to get some feedback from parents before we move forward with that. We have a little bit more flexibility in our programming to be able to allow that option for parents. And it's one that we're hoping parents will be open to, because we do think it will give them a little bit more flexibility. We use the same curriculum as the Title I pre-K. Our teachers attend that same professional development, and we really continue to work and collaborate together through PLCs and other training opportunities. That's it for pre-K separate setting, unless anyone has any specific questions about that.
Thank you, Ms. Golnick and Ms. Perikaji. We appreciate your expertise on pre-K.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Madam Vice Chair and members of the board. I'll introduce myself, Todd Jones, the Chief Technology Officer for the district. I know there's been a lot of burning questions about, how are we going to address the technology needs going into this extremely unusual year. As you all may recall, we finished up the 4th year of our 4-year cycle with aging equipment, so we need to get new equipment in as soon as possible. So the anticipated device delivery dates will be August 10th. That's going to be just in the nick of time. We've been trying to get some firm commitments from our vendors. They've been waiting on a purchase order from us before they can give those. That was finally tendered on Friday the 17th, and they need a couple days of processing to put it through their systems to see when the target arrival date is going to be. But we do have a contingency plan as well that I want to discuss. So the device distribution, once we get these in, the priority is going to be on grades 1 and 3. Kindergarten through 3 don't have devices that they took home way back in March. All the then 3rd graders and 12th graders did. And they're now 4th graders through 12th graders with some graduates. So what we're planning on doing is having the grades 1-3 be a priority in an elementary drive-through prior to the start of school. We're looking at August 12th through 14th, spilling over into the weekend as necessary. But we already have the iPads that we're going to earmark for the kindergartners. So we're going to get them distributed prior to August 10th. That'll also give us an opportunity to study our drive-through process and make sure our time studies are accurate on a smaller scale. The teacher devices are to be distributed in school during teacher work days, August 12th through 14th. We'll use the standard distribution approach that's been used before, with appropriate distancing and safety measures. Now, if Lenovo cannot meet the August 10th delivery date, which is extremely aggressive, and we're pulling in all of the personal favors that we can to see if they can meet that, we'll look to a rental approach. So what we found, the projected enrollment for grades 1 through 3 would be a little over 1,600 devices. We have approximately 1,000 Chromebooks on hand. We'll have to see how many need repair after some of the summer programming. But what we would do is we would allocate out the Chromebooks we have on hand to the first group in the 1 through 3. Then we would rent a little over 600 loaners for a cost of approximately $30,000 for 1 month. That cost includes the necessary Google licensing we would need to manage those Chromebooks, which unfortunately would be a one-time cost that we couldn't use those licenses on future devices. So the license cost would be associated with the rentals, and then the other cost would just be the per month charge. We would also look at getting 607 teacher and TA laptops for about another $32,000 for 1 month. We'll need to get those in much sooner than the 10th because there's a lot of preparatory work. They won't have been configured by our specifications, so we would need to do a lot of imaging and a lot of manual work to get those ready. That may mean we need to pull in some contract labor in order to meet these schedules. During the distribution, we will provide login information to make sure that the students that get these devices have the minimal instructions they need to log in. It's pretty streamlined, but we want to make sure we're providing that to them with bilingual hard copy, and also to have web-based information as well that will bolster that. We've got our hotspot information on the website, and thanks to some of the data we're getting from the surveys that are going out, we've got a better idea of the number of students that have unreliable Wi-Fi and the number of students that have reliable Wi-Fi but not as quick as they would like. We'll look at ways in which we can piggyback hotspot allocation during the distribution, so it can be more of a one-stop approach for folks. As you know, we have established parking lot Wi-Fi access at Cedar Ridge, Orange, CWS Stanford, ALS, and Gravelly Hill Middle School. Other than Orange High, if student families can simply pull up to the front door canopy, they can connect in with their school devices, and they can download whatever they need to be able to work offline. The one exception there is Orange High. We found we got much better coverage if we put it, I believe, on the 200 wing facing the student parking lot. But we've got all this information up on the website so that families can access it. We're also going to be using our roving bus Wi-Fi, working closely with the transportation folks, and also getting input from Ms. Sharita Cobb and some of her folks who might help identify some good areas of significant need for Wi-Fi that we can have the buses service. We're also looking at the community partners, Cedar Grove and Eflin Community Centers, the Ruritan Club, any other areas that have public Wi-Fi that are receptive to having the student families access their free Wi-Fi. Then we're also going to work with the digital learning coaches and instructional technology to make sure that for the offline access with Wi-Fi for families that have been able to get materials at our parking lot Wi-Fi, or maybe from the roving bus or community partners, that there's some good instruction for those students in how they do those downloads, and then how they can access those materials in the offline mode, knowing that when they reconnect to Wi-Fi, it will upload their work and make that available. Also looking to reach out to public access TV for the possibility that they may be able to support, to see if they're agreeable to supporting some of the lessons on the public access channels for the cases where there may be folks that have public access TV but are not in a good Wi-Fi area. So that is the overall plan for technology, with the big shining number being August 10th, when we're shooting to get all of this equipment in so that we can turn around and prep that for distribution prior to the beginning of school. Not just for the students, but for the K through 3 students, but for the teachers as well. The timelines here you see, by August 7th, we want to have all the iPads distributed at the 7 elementary schools to the kindergarten students. August 10th, the teacher and TA devices and grade 1 through 3 devices arrive. We'll do device prep. Again, if we have to go the rental route, we'll need to get those in earlier because the amount of preparation is much more significant. August 12th, we will begin the 2,300 teacher, TA, and grade 1 through 3 device distribution by staff, led by IT and contractors as needed. We will distribute hotspots concurrently based on the survey results. Then by August 16th, which is the Sunday before the beginning of school, we'll have that distribution complete for the teachers, the TAs, and grades 1 through 3, with kindergarten having already received their iPads. The first day of school will be on the 17th, and our plans are to have us completed. Sorry, let me go back up. Have that completed for all of those plans for the distribution. And if we can get this done in time, complete the 500 classroom tech installations that are also going to be done in order to support that synchronous and simultaneous learning. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions the board may have, or that you may choose to hold those to the end.
Does anyone have anything burning that they can't wait till the end for? I don't see any, so thank you so much, Mr. Jones.
You're welcome.
Good evening again, board members. There's research that speaks to the importance of having structures in place that allow students and families to feel comfortable in an online environment. The research also speaks to the importance of open communication on the school's end in an online environment to help students and families find success in online schooling. Outside of the research, we just know this to be best practice. On this slide, you will see some brainstorm ideas that the Reentry Committee came up with around 2 structures that will help support students and families as we begin the school year. Those 2 structures are open house and orientation. We are having open house and orientation in order to get our students and families comfortable with the online format, as it will give us the opportunity to continue to keep the lines of communication open between our families and the school. We are going to have an open house just like in the traditional years, except in this case, it will be virtual. While all grades and grade levels will be a part of open house, our online open house will also have an intentional focus on our transition grades of kindergarten, 6th grade, and 9th grade. Open house will also focus on getting our parents adjusted to remote learning, and we will also want to use this time to get a better understanding of how we can support students and parents as we move forward with online learning. In terms of the virtual orientation, the focus will be on building relationships, providing tutorials on the online platform, provide clarity on expectations and logistics related to online instruction, and provide social emotional support for our students. At this time, nothing is set in stone with open house and orientation, but over the coming days, we will be working with principals who will, in turn, will work with their staffs on preparing for open house and orientation. At this time, I will turn it over to Sarah Pitts, the Director of Safety, and Katina McCulley, Director of Transportation. They will discuss child nutrition and transportation with you tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Good evening, everyone. We've been working hard on our plans for both B and C to ensure that meals are available in an accessible manner for our students, including our remote learners. Currently, child nutrition is operating under the summer feeding program, which means that breakfast and lunch can be provided at a reimbursable rate for any student under the age of 18, and it does not depend on enrollment. This program is set to expire as of August 31st. DPI has applied for a waiver with the USDA to allow schools to extend the summer feeding program. We are currently waiting for their decision. If this is not approved, Orange County Schools must transition to the National School Lunch Program, which is our normal operation method during the school year. This will require us to verify the student's enrollment prior to giving them a meal, and the reimbursement that we receive will be dependent on how the child is registered. If we have to continue and proceed to the National School Lunch Program, we'll be restricted on how and to whom we can provide the meals. Again, the student's enrollment must be verified. Orange County Schools is working on the details for our food distribution, as it is dependent on the decision of DPI and the USDA. Food distribution will be provided to students, but at this time, we are still working out the details. Our decision will also be based on the safety of our staff, students, and families. Please stay tuned as we will provide more information at a later date. And now I will turn it over to Katina McCulley.
Thank you,
Ms.
Sarah.
Pitts.
Sorry. Thanks, I'm Sarah. Under Plan C, the Transportation Department plans are to continue working with our Nutrition Department to ensure that our families receive nutritional meals and to work in partnership with the Technology Department to provide a roving bus for Wi-Fi access. Back in March, when schools were closed due to COVID-19, LEAs were granted the flexibility by DPI to use PRC 056 funds to cover the cost of school bus usage and driver salaries for food distribution or delivery. On June 30th, at the end of the fiscal year, DPI ended the PRC 056 usage flexibility. As of July 1, following normal transportation summer operations to cover the cost of bus usage and driver salaries, any costs associated with transportation for summer food distribution are being funded or covered under the Child Nutrition Summer Feeding Program. For Plan C, at this time, we are working on the details in collaboration, technology, and the finance department to ensure that our transportation plan includes delivering food and Wi-Fi access to our families in the safest and economical way possible based on PRC 056 funds usage flexibility per DPI guidance. As stated by Ms. Pitts, please stay tuned as we are finalizing the details for Plan C and also developing a plan for transportation to transition to Plan B, and we'll provide more information at a later date. At this time, I will be passing to Richard Lewis, Director for School Community Relations, to discuss supervised learning labs.
Thank you, Ms. McCulley. I'm going to stop thanking everyone because I feel like this is getting awkward, but I appreciate the staff so much, and I will speak at the end. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for your time. We would like to share a potential way to support our working families during our out-of-school time. Let me be clear that our primary focus initially is to support working families, particularly those who receive subsidies when their children return to school under Plan C, all online. Some of our families have expressed concerns about their younger children during the day in need of academic support, while they are at work via their surveys and family focus group discussions. An opportunity to meet some of these needs, with your approval, is to offer supervised learning labs. Supervised learning labs will support remote learning for students from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. We're still fleshing out the details. However, we plan for the supervised learning labs to be facilitated by non-school-based OCS staff. We're fortunate to have a number of familiar faces to OCS who can support our learning labs, such as our substitute teachers and after-school staff. We'll follow all the established safety guidelines via a day camp type style setting. Before we can guarantee enrollment numbers, we will need to determine the buildings we can use, staff availability, and family needs. We have had a local church offer some space, but before we proceed, we need your input regarding this approach. In addition, we'd like to request some flexibility in the use of our Orange County school facilities. Thank you. Now, I would like to pass my time over for safety and health to our next presenter.
Good evening again, all. As part of the district's Return to Learn plan, we are constantly monitoring NCDHHS's updates and adjusting our plan as needed. In response to the most recent update received, a PowerPoint presentation was provided to Orange County Schools administration during a meeting to discuss what operations would look like when the staff and students returned to the building. This presentation was provided to the board in last week's update, and information will be provided to the public in the very near future. For tonight's presentation, however, I will only focus on the specifics in Plan C. So as part of Plan C, we're going to limit access within the building to meet the social distancing requirements. Floor and wall decals will be installed to ensure 6 feet distancing in offices, break rooms, restrooms, and areas where staff and visitors may congregate. We're going to arrange the furniture to encourage social distancing. This action may require that some furniture be marked off or removed, and that protective barriers be installed. We're going to discontinue in-person activities that will bring people together in large groups. And visitors will be extremely limited to only those who require access at this time. This will be a cultural change for both staff, students, families, and visitors. Face masks will be required for all who enter our buildings unless the individual meets the exceptions approved by NCDHHS. Governor Cooper recently announced that every student and staff member will be provided 5 masks each. Until then, each site will have disposable masks, both adult and pediatric sizes available. This will also apply to Orange County Schools vehicles, which are transporting more than one student or staff member. Face masks will be required in those too. Health screenings, including temperature checks, will be required daily for anyone entering an Orange County Schools building or vehicle. Staff will continue to self-attest daily, and visitors will be required to self-screen, including a temperature check, upon entering the main office. Staff will be encouraged to monitor their symptoms throughout the day and take leave if they demonstrate symptoms. Again, this will be another cultural shift for our staff who are committed to our mission of supporting students and often work through feeling under the weather. Informational signage will be posted at the building entrances, restrooms, break rooms, in areas of congregation and throughout the building to reinforce good social practices. Signage will be bilingual. Adequate supplies will be available in all areas to support cleaning, disinfection, and healthy hygiene behaviors, such as increased cleaning of high-touch surfaces, supplies in offices and meeting areas to allow for spot cleaning, protective screens where social distancing is not possible, and hand sanitizer at all designated main entrances. At this time, our focus is going to be primarily on supporting on-site staff to ensure that they remain healthy and safe by providing training and having supplies accessible to them. At this time, I will turn it over to Sharita Cobb to discuss our health metrics.
Good afternoon. So I'm Quintana Stewart, Orange County Health Director, and I'm filling in for Ms. Sharita Cobb, who is not able to be here this evening. So I do want to acknowledge the work that Ms. Cobb has put into putting the metrics together so that we could discuss tonight, and actually just say a big thank you, Dr. Felder, Sharita Cobb, and Ms. Diane Rocker. They have been absolutely wonderful to work with for myself and some of my staff in the health department. So we do want to use metrics to kind of inform our decision making as we move through the different plans and, you know, work to bring students back on site for learning this school year. So the metrics are going to be our way, again, to have some informed data decision kind of points so that we are sure that whenever we do bring the students back, we're doing so in a safe manner. So the 4 metrics that we're going to use to monitor the activity of this virus in our community include the daily case count. And so this is the lab confirmed cases here in Orange County. We're also going to look at the cumulative case count in Orange County, and we're going to do that over a trending period of 3 weeks. And we'll talk more about that in another slide. We're going to look at the trend data that we receive that tells us about COVID-like illnesses that present in our emergency departments. This is a great surveillance metrics that kind of gives us an idea of what's going on and what's swirling around in the community with regard to this virus. And then we're going to look at our percent of positive tests. Next slide. So some things to consider as we use the metrics to determine the potential impact here in the county. We need to consider things such as holidays. So what we've seen since the beginning of this pandemic is that there is a natural tendency for us to see a spike in cases after a holiday. It's just human nature, and folks tend to gather around holidays. So when folks gather, even if they are trying to be in compliance with the mass gathering order and the rule, they tend to share this virus, not intentionally, but it happens. So what we have seen a trend is after holidays, we see a spike in our cases. The other thing to consider is the season. We know this fall is also going to bring the flu season back around for us. In fact, we're already starting to see a few cases of flu this early in the year. Demographics and travel. People travel all throughout the county and beyond. And so as we prepare to bring our student population back, particularly the college students, then we're going to have a lot of influx in the community of folks that have been all over, not just North Carolina, but the country and potentially the world. We may see clusters. So clusters occur when you have 5 or more confirmed cases in the same demographic area. So we'll be looking at that because that could impact the spread throughout our community. Then we'll look at household contacts. And that's another thing that we've seen over the last couple of weeks. It is really hard to contain this virus whenever one person in the household is a confirmed positive. It's just really difficult for many of our families to isolate and separate while living in the same household. With the best of intentions and everybody trying to clean surfaces and be really diligent about that, we're not very successful with that. So if it hits one member in the household, it generally spreads and affects everyone in the household. So these are some things that will impact this virus in our community. Next slide. So whenever we use the metric, we want to look at trends. It will do us little good to just look at these 4 measures for one moment in time. What we want to see is a consistent downward trend or decrease in these numbers, because that will tell us that we are suppressing the virus and how it is spreading in the community. So we're going to look at trends, and while again we report and look at these numbers daily, and we can absolutely do it weekly, for the sake of this and deciding if you want to move from plan C into plan B, we want to see consistent downward or decrease in those numbers over a 3 to 4 week period. And then here is noted that there will be a 10-day notification that you all will send out prior to making a decision to go back to opening schools up and have children back on site physically. Next slide. So some of the things that we've discussed as we had an opportunity to work with some of the staff in the district was this concept of a multi-district task force. Working in the health department and, having, some oversight for the entire county, we think it would be beneficial for the district to consider maybe creating a task force where you work with the Chapel Hill Carborough City School District, so that maybe you can work in tandem on the decisions to move to the different plans if possible. I will say I had an opportunity to speak with Dr. Felder last week, and it just worked out because I had not yet had the same type of conversation with Chapel Hill Carbo City Schools, but I was very pleased whenever I heard the announcement that both districts were kind of moving in the same direction. We also thought about the value of establishing a committee made up of Orange County School staff, Orange County Health Department staff, community members, maybe a county commissioner or two, some of those parents from the district, and absolutely the Board of Education members. And again, we just see the value in having all of those stakeholders together, sitting at the table, discussing how these decisions will impact all the different facets of the community. And then announcing the reopening of schools after, again, we see this downward trend that's observed for at least 3 to 4 weeks. I think the committee has a chance to discuss and, you know, consider other things such as there a holiday coming up where we tend to see a spike, or, you know, are they going to get out for this break? So we just thought it would be valuable to maybe consider a multi-district task force moving forward as you continue to plan and respond to this pandemic. Next slide. So in using the metrics, whenever we want to make the decision about whether or not you're ready to move to Plan B, again, we're going to look at 4 metrics. And these are the same metrics that we're constantly watching and monitoring for the Department of Health and Human Services. So Governor Cooper, when he and Dr. Cohen are making decisions, they do it like a daily data download each week where they let us know how we're performing as a state. But we can do that also here specific to our Orange County data. The Orange County Health Department, we currently monitor this and we have this information up on our website. So these are some things that we can use for your consideration as you begin to look at the different plans and whether or not it's time to move or if we need to stay still. So as I mentioned earlier, the COVID-like illnesses, that is a great surveillance tool, again, because it will give you an idea of what's going on in the community. This is used to tell us how many folks showed up in the ED with these COVID-like symptoms, you know, the fever, the chills, loss of your taste buds, and all the multiple symptoms we're seeing with COVID-19 that we also tend to see, as I said, with the seasonal flu. So that's an indicator of what's going on, and we can find the folks that have not yet been tested or they have not received a positive test result for COVID-19. But we'll have an idea that something is still going on in the community and is spreading and looks a lot like COVID-19. We also look at our lab confirmed cases for COVID-19. So again, you have to have a lab confirmed test that says you are positive for COVID-19. These are the numbers that we're capturing with this particular metrics. What we know is that there are still many community members that are asymptomatic or they have such mild symptoms that they never go and get tested. So while it's not perfect data, it is a pretty solid source of data that we can count and look at based on those that actually went and did the lab tests. Then we look at the positive percent of our COVID-19 tests. So this is a percentage of all the tests performed in our community that ended up being positive. I know there's been some talk and they say, well, when you increase your testing, of course, you're going to see a higher percent positive. Not necessarily the case. But and this is why we really want to see, well, what is our percent of positive out of all the tests that we're conducting in the community? For the state, the recommendation to say that, yes, you still have community transmission and community spread, but the goal is for your percent positive to be 5% or lower. So currently here in Orange County, we are sitting at 6%. And we did see a decrease since last week. Last week, when I pulled the data, we were at 7%. So that's encouraging, but again, that's just one metric, and we want to look at all of these metrics together again and look at the trend over time. Next slide. So in using metrics, working with district staff, they came up with a way for you to kind of gauge how we're doing and what the progress is. So if you look at the data, again, in the trend format over 4 weeks, they say Plan A would be considered low risk. So that means that we've seen continual or significant decreases in the 4 metrics, in all 4 metrics over the course of 4 weeks. So that's a good sign. That would, and we can create this dashboard and make it real user-friendly, easy to read. So if we mimic kind of what Department of Health and Human Services is doing, if we were to hit this measure, it would be like a green check. So things are moving in the right direction. That's good. Plan B, they consider that medium risk. And so you see a decrease or stabilization over the last 4 weeks for all the metrics. But you determine that some other factors, these are those impacts we mentioned, may be in play. And so maybe you should just hold steady because maybe you're not out of the woods yet. So I could see a medium risk, say if you were looking to, we had great trends for the last 4 weeks, but we know there's a pending holiday where folks are going to be out and it will tend to be more mass gathering. That could give you a medium type risk. And then Plan C is high risk, and that means you have not seen a decrease or any stabilization in any of those 4 metrics over the past 4 weeks. And that's kind of where we are to date right now. Our numbers are not trending downward, and so you all have chosen to go with Plan C because it is a higher risk to bring students back on site at this time. Next slide. So Orange County Health Department and the Orange County School District, in our collaboration, as I kind of mentioned, we will do a weekly dashboard to present to the superintendent and leadership staff to include the graphs of these metrics over a 2-week period. Again, we can have this, you all can take this information and post it on the district's website. The data will be provided, but one thing we want to note, whenever we look at the COVID-like illness, the ED data, sometimes what we've seen as we've been using these metrics is that the activity is so low, it's so small that it's hard to graph it. And if that is ever the case over any period of time, then we'll give you that information over a longer period of time, just so you can kind of see it visually. And we are prepared to send out this first dashboard as early as this Thursday. We get a weekly data report from the state each Wednesday. And so that is the information that we use to inform our dashboards at the health department. And so we're prepared to put together the first dashboard for the district as early as this Thursday. Next slide. And here they just listed the website. So if you've not yet had a chance to visit the health department website, we do have a COVID-19 website, and it has all of our data and dashboard information currently up on that site. So if you get a chance, I would really encourage you to look at that. And again, we link to the state, North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, their COVID website, where they too also keep all of this information up. It is updated each day by 12 noon. And we update our website daily as well to include the new case counts. And the other thing, this was a really hot topic earlier on in the pandemic, but folks early on wanted to know, where are the cases, where are the cases? And so Department of Health and Human Services added this to their dashboard website, where you can go in and you can actually type in the zip code and it'll tell you the number of cases in each zip code. So we have lots of data out there. So if you have any questions and you want to know what's going on in Orange County and how is the virus spreading, DHHS has a wealth of information on their site, and we have mimicked and put lots of that information on our site. Any questions?
So if I may just say thank you to Ms. Stewart for your collaboration and for taking time out of your very busy schedule to be here tonight, and for not only presenting your part of this presentation, but for filling in Mrs. Cobbs. Also, board, I just want to take this opportunity to note that it was only last Tuesday at last Tuesday's board meeting that you requested that matrix be identified to determine when it is a safe time to shift to Plan B. Per Ms. Stewart's presentation, you can see we acted immediately in support of your request. A convening was held just that following Friday, so 3 days later. And so we are recommending we move forward with creating a task force to finalize the metrics that will be analyzed to make decisions about our pathway to Plan B. And I also just want to say that I am so pleased to inform the board that indeed Orange County Schools and Chapel Hill Carvel City Schools will be collaborating by forming a joint task force. Today I spoke with the interim superintendent, Dr. Jim Cosby, and he confirmed that this task force collaboration will occur, that Chapel Hill Carvel City Schools is willing and very interested in collaborating with us, and that collaboration will also not only include the department, the Orange County Department of Health and Human Services, but also Duke University, UNC, and possibly the National Institute for Health. So with that, open questions, any questions specific to Ms. Stewart's presentation at this time?
Ms. Stewart, thank you so much for being here and for all of this data, This is incredibly helpful as we will make these difficult decisions, and we're so grateful for you. And thank you, Dr. Felder, for facilitating this. This has been wonderful. Are there any board members who have questions? Ms. Hauser?
This is just for Ms. Stewart, right? Because not all the other stuff. I just have a question of whether we have ever broken down for the two school districts, because essentially Chapel Hill is kind of an urban school district. We're a rural school district, a little different. And even I actually went in and played by zip code yesterday. And Mebane, for example, includes the Alamance County part of Mebane. And so the zip code doesn't quite give me the numbers, but I was just wondering if you did the breakdown of the two school districts.
So we have not yet, but that is something we can look into. Again, great partnership with both districts and the school nurses. And as you all know, in flu season, you all give us some kind of surveillance report to let us know, you know, how many students you have that are out sick, and you watch that census. So it is absolutely something that we can explore and we can figure out. Yep.
Ms. Smiley, then Mr. Atherton.
Ms. Stewart, first, I just want to say thank you for all of you, everything you've been doing through, I imagine, well before March even, to lead the health department through this. Everybody in every seat, I think, is just, I know it's a first for everybody. And a couple of things I think I just wanted to appreciate here. One is moving so quickly in response to this question about metrics. And two was this idea of showing them visually and transparently, sort of an update to families so we can all keep an eye on where we're trending. And I really like the idea of the task force. I think as much as, you know, there are different parts of this county for sure, we know that we have so many families who work at UNC. And so I think there's likely to be a lot of sort of back and forth here. A couple of questions about the metrics. So a couple of questions about the metrics. One was the point about wanting to get the positive rate below 5%. Is that sort of a downward trend and then in the last week it goes below 5% and we're good? Or is that wanting to see multiple weeks below 5%?
Yeah, so we would want to see multiple weeks at 5% or lower. Again, we know that it is here, it's in the community, we're in the middle of a pandemic, but 5% as your percent positive shows us that we are starting to suppress the spread of the virus. So that is the goal.
Great. And then the one other metric that I was curious if you had considered, it seems really important to me is, and it might be sort of covered otherwise in those metrics, is the ratio sort of the number of presumed active cases to the population. So like how many active cases do we think exist in the community? I know they have some sort of presume recovered, like we can't really know whether people are recovered, but that but there's how many active cases are circulating. I've seen some like data visualizations. There's one from Georgia Tech that sort of you can put in, if you put 10 people together in the room, what's the likelihood that someone in that room has COVID? And so that, like, what's the overall spread? Seems like it might be another metric to consider if it's not sort of like already covered by one of those other things you're looking at.
Yeah, it's not covered, and we can grab that information. And I cringe every week when I give like this update to our policy group, elected officials, because I'm always giving that total cumulative number, and I just know that's not a true picture of what we're seeing. And so early on, before our numbers increased, like they started being 30 a day, we were keeping up, and I could pull that and say, but this is how many active cases we have, meaning, yes, we're at well over 1,000. I think it was 1,112 cases. That's cumulative. But I need to go back and start pulling to see how many are active, because many of those have gone through the cycle and they're now no longer under monitoring or isolation quarantine orders. So that, thank you. That's duly noted.
Thank you. Mr. Atherton?
So I'd like to thank you, Ms. Stewart, as well, for all your work in our community and also helping us to, and Ms. Cobbs to, get to some metrics, because, it's, we want to get to facts and understand it. And one of the questions I had for you is, we talk about the downward trend, and I'm more of a deterministic person, right? So what does trend mean, right? Does that mean it has to go down slightly over multiple weeks, or, how do we get more to what a trend means? Because I know a lot of our community is watching, and they're probably thinking the same thing of, does it have to be, what's significant versus a trend, right? A trend just says it's going down. So do you have feelings on, what makes sense, or you're really feeling, let's let this work group go, just discuss it and bring that recommendation back on how to quantify that versus just
Right.
down?
Yeah, and so I would absolutely kick that to our epidemiologists and informatics folks, and let them, more specifically define what it is. But at first brush, I think I look at the trend to be just something consistent, and so not the fluctuation that we've been seeing. So if I were to count it as this is a solid trend, and we feel good about, what the impact is right now in the community, I would look for something consistent. Even with the state, they have some of the metrics that they report on, and it neither increased or decreased, but it was just stable. So that was the trend for that 2-week period that they were looking at. So I'm just looking for something consistent, but I will share that with the work group and allow them to more specifically define what we are considering to be our trend.
Okay. And I just wanted to echo what Ms. Hauser said about being able to look at our rural areas versus, more of our densely populated, just so we understand that, because I do think, they are different. The last one I had is more of a just data point, is I haven't heard of any outbreaks in some of the daycares in our community, right? So these are people that are dealing with children. They are, the essential workers are paying. Do you know how many of these care facilities are open right now? And then are there any cases in Orange County that have occurred?
So we have had cases in the daycare centers. I don't know exactly the number. I can find out, but I don't know the exact number of how many of the centers are open. So we have had a case in a daycare, but it was not an outbreak. So there weren't more than 2 confirmed positives in that particular daycare. And those things are reportable. They have to report this to the state, and the state now keeps that on their website. So knock on wood, we have not had any outbreaks in our daycare facilities in the county at this time.
Okay. Yeah, because I just wonder, since a lot of these care facilities are already dealing with social distancing, and they've done some learning about pain points. If there's some learnings that the school could get from what they're dealing with, right?
Yeah.
Because they've been doing it for a long time. And, whether it's the parents, the enter procedures, exit procedures, keeping parents in the loop, how do you handle the lunches, the handoffs, here's your papers, water, throughout the day, all of those things. I think there could be some learning from them. Obviously we're on a different scale and we have different challenges, but I do think there might be some things we could learn that had to go through for the transition. But thank you so much, Ms. Stewart.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Thank you all for having me. And I know our environmental health team will be more than happy to assist with some of those details, because they have been in those daycare centers, helping facilities prepare and, come up with solid plans on how to do this and do it safely.
Ms. Stewart, could I ask you just one follow-up question? I really appreciate Mr. Atherton's point that we have so much to learn from facilities that have been able to stay open in this time. And my question is around the fact that daycare centers have really young children who are very likely to be asymptomatic. And I'm wondering if the numbers you're collecting are just the employees there, if there's any data around parents who have gotten sick, anything like that that would tie to the indication that there could be some spread from children. Because if your child is asymptomatic, I highly doubt many parents would be getting those children tested.
Correct. So what we have seen, and it was, maybe it was one kid, or it really was a household contact that had the confirmed positive. But anytime we find out about a case, we do that case investigation. And so then you immediately pull everyone out, and everyone is to isolate at home for 14 days. And we know that works, and that has stopped the spread. But no, I don't have any data that I know right off. I can go back and make sure and talk to my epi folks, but I don't have any data right off that is showing me that the cases are spreading in between children. Most of the time it was either a staff person or a parent that had a confirmed positive. But yeah, not children.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anyone else?
Ms. Stewart?
Go right ahead, Ms. Doyle.
For all of this excellent information, I very much appreciate how much this is all put together so quickly. I have a question about access and test result turnaround time. I'm curious if that's something you've seen any issues with in the sites. I noted there are sites listed on the Orange County Health Department website. Are you seeing long-term turnaround times for results, like on the order of a week? Because I'm curious how that impacts both accuracy when we are moving towards a plan B, but we have delays in testing. Also, I'm wondering if you're seeing equity issues, disparities in families who are using primary care doctors versus families who are relying on the testing sites.
So my answer is yes to all of your questions. And so over the last, I would say 2, maybe 3 weeks, we started seeing a delay in the turnaround time for those test results. And so it's a supply issue. I'm sure you've probably seen it, heard it on the news. And so labs are having a hard time getting that chemical reagent that they have to process the test. So it has slowed down tremendously. We got to a place early on, it was slow, and then they got back online, and supply chain was good. And so we were getting results in 24 hours. 48 hours seemed like a long time. Now we are back to the 5 to 7 day turnaround time for test results. So that is absolutely an issue, and it's an issue all across the state. As far as access to testing, that is an issue. And it just it's compounded now with the supply issue. So what we've tried to do is work with community partners and set up some mobile site testing events. We have a strike team out of the health department, so it's a communicable disease nurse, staff from EMS, and they are mobile and they go out into communities. If we identify, say, a cluster, then we're sending our staff out and going door to door to try and test and educate and have folks quarantine until we get results back. But yeah, it is an issue with access to testing. The bulk of our tests in this county are being run over at UNC. They have the RDC Center. That is the most robust testing that we have in the county. But we are trying our best to set up some of these mobile testing sites whenever possible. So we did one early part of June up in Northern Orange Health Department. We worked with UNC. They had a mobile bus that came out on site. And we did testing up at New Zion Church up in northern part of the county. And then this week, we're going to do some testing in Carborough. On Wednesday, we're going to do testing at Carborough High School. So we are trying to move it around so that, you know, everyone maybe that's not able to access and go to UNC, that they still have an opportunity for testing. But yes, I am really concerned about the usefulness of the test if we're not getting results back for a week. I mean, I still can give them an order and say, well, we want you to stay home in quarantine until you get these results, but that is a significant delay.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I don't see any. Thank you so much, Ms. Stewart. We're so grateful you've been here. This has been really helpful.
Thank you.
So board, as we wrap up our presentation, I want to share with you a campaign, if you will, that we are undertaking in the district. So not returning to school on August 17th. Mr. Jones, please advance to the next slide. Let's see where you are. Yep, there you go. All right, thank you. So not returning to school on August 17th is not at all how any of us have ever imagined going back to school after summer break. Just never imagined. And in my entire career, I've never fathomed there would ever be a back to school that didn't involve touring schools, meeting and greeting teachers, welcoming them back, seeing kids in the hallway laughing, catching up with their peers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Returning to school and decreasing the spread of COVID-19, however, is not, and I repeat, is not a school or school district issue. It is really a community issue. It's the village of Northern Orange County's issue. So we each have a part to play in Northern Orange County, and we simply cannot return to school if it jeopardizes the health and safety of our students and staff. So to keep this in the forefront of Orange County as a community, as a village, in the forefront of our minds, we are launching a Return to Classrooms campaign. And the following are examples of how we hope to keep this message of please do your part in the forefront. And by doing your part, we mean the 3 W's. Wear a face covering, wait 6 feet apart, and please, please wash your hands. So next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. Next slide, please. All right, so do we need to have public comments before board makes decisions or discuss the presentation?
I believe that we do. And we also, in the spirit of unprecedented things with this board and the school year, I have never seen it be 9:55 and having yet to have public comment. So I think that we might need to motion to extend the meeting and then have public comment. Then we can come back and take these actions and we can figure out how we want to move forward with the schedule. I'm going to propose that we probably wait on the capital update unless you think that that's urgent, Dr. Felder. And
no,
I think
we
the
can
board
wait.
Okay, and I think the board can also, I want us to take a quick action on establishing our committees, but we can do, I think the board can kind of do some of its housekeeping via email and then sort of present to the public at the next meeting briefly. So now I'm going to call for a motion to extend the meeting for a while and then have public comment.
Motion to extend the meeting till 10:30.
Second?
I have a motion from Mr. Atherton and a second from Ms. Smiley. Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley?
Yes.
Ms. Moore?
Yes.
I vote yes. Ms. Hauser?
Yes.
Ms. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Atherton?
Yes.
Motion approves. We are in the meeting until 10:30, and I will call Miss Mary Palmetier for public comment. We'll have an audio check, and your 3 minutes to speak will start after that. Mr. Jones, could you please promote her?
Palmetier, and I'm a parent in the district, and I'm really just on to listen in on how these things are discussed and decided. And the two things that I was really looking to hear about today was if it's 4 weeks or 9 weeks of remote learning. And then the other thing was the metrics, which neither really have 100% been answered, but I'm hoping that will continue on in this meeting.
Okay, thank you so much. Next up is Amy Hughes. Mr. Jones, are you able to locate and promote her?
Amy Hughes, you are unmuted.
I had no public comments.
Thank you. Next up is Bria Wolson.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
We sure can. Your time will start now. Thank you.
So I think regarding the biggest question that's out there is the difference between the VA and the remote learning. I appreciate all of your work on this. I think parents feel a little misled about how the VA will work in terms of teacher instruction. I happened to talk to an administrator today at a local high school, and he made it seem like the VA is very self-paced. So little teacher interaction. So we're having a hard time deciding between those two options. Your slides seem to make it seem like they're both very similar in the synchronous instruction. Can you give us more details on that?
Per board policy, we don't respond to public comment in this format, but we can make sure that someone reaches out to you tomorrow specifically, and also that our website is updated imminently so that folks can have a better understanding.
That would be helpful. Again, just understanding better how teacher interaction with our students will be different between those two platforms, because we're getting different answers on how that works.
Thank you so much for that feedback. We'll make sure to provide clarity.
Thank you.
Next up is Craig Lloyd.
Can you hear me now?
We've got you.
Yes, I know that it was said that the board could not respond, but can Dr. Felder answer questions?
Unfortunately, not in this format, Mr. Lloyd, but we'll be happy to follow up with you tomorrow.
Okay, I attended the last board meeting that you had, And from what I understood, there was going to be a study done to look at the tiers of not necessarily being a one size fit all for the students, from maybe having it tiered to where kindergarten come in at a different time, or middle school or high school. Has that been done? That study that was spoke at the last thing, I wanted to find out if that was done. And I do also agree. I managed the Chamber of Commerce for over 8 years in Hillsborough, and those metrics are flawed. You can't look at the whole county and compare it to our rural part of the county. So I would like to request on behalf of all the parents and the students in this area that we have the metrics done for those zip codes like Bonnie had mentioned as well. So that's something we wanted to look at. And then finally wanted to check and see if the teachers, I know the teachers are concerned about coming back. Want to find out if the teachers have been surveyed to find out what the issues are, where they have the biggest concerns. Us as a community can do what we can. I mean, if we need to build stuff, if we need to monitor stuff, if we need to donate stuff, we will do that. But I think there definitely needs to be some kind of survey to give some comfort to these teachers and administrators out there, to let them know that we as a community, want to do our part as well.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Next, and our last speaker is Chrissy Wells.
Ms. Wells is unmuted.
Ms. Wells, are you there? Ms. Wells, unfortunately, we can't hear you.
It appears she just dropped off.
Okay, that's too bad. Ms. Wells, if you can still hear us, please feel welcome to send your feedback to the board via email. We absolutely read every word that we get. So that will conclude our public comments for this evening. So I'm going to turn it back to Dr. Felder to walk us through what information you need us to take action on.
So much, Mrs. McKenzie. So there are 3 items we would like the board's decision around. The first is a recommendation to remain in Plan C for the first 9 weeks, which would be the first marking period, to provide instructional stability, allow adequate time for scheduling shifts that will need to be made for students in both pathways as we shift to Plan B, should the data indicate that we will be shifting to Plan B, and to enable us to pilot smaller groups of students returning so we can perfect all the things that we have to perfect, temperature testing, social distancing, et cetera, required in Plan B to ensure the safety and health of our students and staff. So that's the first item. The second one is to get the board's decision around the further exploration of the supervised learning labs that Mr. Lewis spoke about. So those supervised, not only the implementation of the supervised learning labs, but the flexibility in usage of Orange County Schools facilities, not staff, if needed. So again, if implementing the supervised learning labs, we would begin with using county facilities and churches that make their space available to us, but we would like to also have the option using Orange County Schools facilities, and perhaps Steph Dubuisson can speak a little bit more to that one. And last but not least, with regards to the metrics. And so, and really this one is around moving forward with establishing the task force. And while yes, we will certainly be looking at metrics as it relates to Northern Orange County and the zip codes here, but collaborating with Chapel Hill Carrboro City Schools in this effort, and the recommendation thus far to to check in every 4 weeks and determine if there is a need to shift to Plan B. So those are the areas that we need the board's decision around. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Felder. I'm going to open this up for discussion and then we can take action. Does anyone have any immediate questions, concerns, feedback that we'd like to talk about? Mr. Atherton?
Thank you. So I do have questions, since we held all our questions during the presentation to give, the community a chance to ask or comment before. The first one I have is quick one for the technology update. I feel very strongly that we need to put stickers of the tech support number on the bottom of every laptop system that the computers are going out, whether it's password, can't log in, can't turn on, needs to be same quality as the asset management tags we use. So families have easy access, especially as we have families that are coming new. They don't know who to call. They don't know who to talk to. It may be a grandmother. I think it's a very easy way so we can reduce some of the frustration with all of the remote. The other question or comment I have, and this goes to staff, is, the virtual academy, all data I have, and I have it written down, is not self-paced. It is not. And, I think parts of what our families are confused on is that it is synchronous. You're going to log in the morning. You're going to be on Zoom, Canvas, big blue button with the teacher. They're going to give you instruction. It's going to be recorded that people can watch later. But at the same time, you then have other tools that help with that learning that you're being taught, which some of those are in the virtual platform like Reader Egg, et cetera. So I just wanted to get feedback from you, Dr. Felder, or others about, can you just confirm this so parents can have this solid, yes, you're going to have teachers teaching you and you're going to have this tools. It's not going to be you're going to log into this website and the student's just going to work their way through it. And I think that's kind of the fear of the two that people are not putting together. You're going to have this Zoom part with physical instruction. So can we just answer that and, remove the concerns that a lot of families have?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Atherton. Confirmed. Confirmed. However, I will I'll give Dr. Dawson and or Dr. Gammon an opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Felder. Mr. Atherton, you are absolutely correct. And yes, confirmed is a good response. We were very specific and we were very particular when selecting the online curriculum tool that we did, that it was not going to be something where we were going to set a student, assign them to a course and then just leave them to their own whatever. We were very particular not to select that model because we know the importance of the value of a teacher and teacher-led instruction. And so we wanted to make sure that we incorporated a program that was teacher-driven because our teachers know our students best. They know the needs of our students. And so while, the teacher will provide for synchronous instruction, there will be opportunities for students who they may need to be able to move ahead a little bit faster or go deeper into something. And those are the kind of variations that we always ask our teachers in the classroom to always create to best meet the levels of our students and their learning. So if a parent sees that for their child, they want something that is more in-depth or they want additional support or supplemental enrichment, that those tools are available to the teachers. And I think for parents that have been asking also, like, how much time am I going to have to sit with my student in front of the computer to do work? That's not for us to be able to say, dictate that this is how much. It's the parents knowing their child and what their child's attention span is, where their needs are. So the parent knowing their own children best will be able to also customize and say, okay, my child, my middle child, I know can sit in front of the computer and be fine and do their work and stay focused, and that's great. But I know for my teenager, I'm going to have to be on them and say, okay, come on, let's go. Did you do your lesson? Did you not? And then maybe for my younger grade one, yes, I am going to have to sit with them more, but that's not something that we as school staff can dictate to families. And so when we're asked that, we're not trying to evade that response or give a generic response. It is because we are really working to customize our learning experience for our students, and the parents know their kids best. So what we try to do is create a structure to give families that flexibility to be able to meet their child's needs as best as possible. So there could be parts that they want self-paced for their child, and we've created those opportunities, but definitely we know the value of teacher-led instruction. So I hope that that helps families to understand.
That does. Thank you. The next comment I have is about the sample schedule, and I do know it's a sample, but one of the key things that I did get a lot of feedback and experienced as a parent as well is on the special rotations. You know, we found that each special created their own Zoom call. You had to know where the link was, you had to click on it. And my feedback, you know, from lots of parents was, let's have first grade specials. That's one Zoom number that you click on, and you know, on that time, you just click on that. You don't have to go look up what the art is or the music or PE, and you have to wait till you get in. But let's try to make this as frictionless as possible and think, you know, on a grade level, how do we make this easier where the parents aren't trying to figure out where they should be? We're more having the staff help pull in where they should be, right? And the last comment I'll give before, you know, I give it back for other members, because I have lots of questions or points, is I just want to acknowledge the working families. I know that we've had lots of meetings, and, you know, I've seen lots of comments that, you know, the board itself may not have acknowledged that we do have families that have, you know, two working families. They're trying to figure this, you know, how to manage this. And I just want to connect that in, you know, to our supervised learning labs. I support that. I think we've got to figure these things out as a community and figure out how we help each other out and get to these solutions. So I believe this supervised learning labs, and looking at how we take 4 weeks and figure out how we start bringing in smaller groups into our schools and figure out how to work through all the things we haven't thought of, right? So say you bring a group in, and then we talk about, oh, how do we do a fire drill that's socially distanced, right? How do we, you know, do we care, right? How do we manage these things? And I know having the students and faculty working through this, we're going to find lots of things we hadn't even thought of. So I definitely want to talk, when we get to that point of the 9 weeks, talking about some method of getting students into the schools that necessarily isn't the learning labs, but really instructional or smaller groups, you know, higher needs. But I just wanted to put that out there that, you know, working families, we are trying to figure out this very difficult situation and give options out there that can help while keeping safe and, you know, supporting our community. But that's the questions I have for now. I'll relinquish and then ask more later. Thank you so much, Dr. Dawson.
Thank you, Mr. Atherton. I want us all to keep in mind that it's 10:15, yes, and just sort of how long we think is appropriate to keep our staff, since they were working around the clock. So I'm just going to put that out there as we move forward. Are there other questions?
One quick question I just want to put out. Is it possible to look at meal swaps, so that if I have a child at Pathways, Stanford, and Orange, I don't need to go to 3 sites to pick up lunches? but that I possibly could do some sort of swap arrangement. So I'm only going to one school during that lunch block, and I'll just leave that and not need a response right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Doyle. Are there any other, Ms. Hauser?
Yeah, I have a couple. I'll try and keep them simple. First one is to Dr. Dawson. You know, we've evolved, and thank you. It's been an amazing evolution to watch the virtual curriculum align with ours. But it looks like we are now moving forward. This was different at the beginning, but now we're moving forward with one curriculum, one schedule, one way of doing this. And is there a reason why we're not combining them? You know, or will we have two different teachers, one teaching the same stuff on the remote track versus the virtual track? And it's important because parents want to know, one of the decision criteria that they're using to decide which way they go is which teachers their kids will align to. So could you talk to that?
So just for clarification, are you asking like in regards to how students will be assigned teachers? Could you clarify?
Yeah, if, you know, will we really be doing two separate tracks? One remote, even though it's the same curriculum, same schedule, there'll be two tracks, one will be remote and one will be virtual. Is that correct? As opposed to
for the student experience as much as possible, yes, and more so in the elementary and middle tiers, yes. And that's why we were asking families to let us know like by now, so that the schools could create their schedules and their class rosters and staffing so that we can see which teachers will be teaching in the virtual academy, which teachers will be teaching with the plan that they are going to be returning to in-person instruction with those students, really grouping those students based upon the requests of the families. And we even did the daily schedule in such a way that once we start transitioning back, that the schedules will stay the same. And so the virtual academy teachers and students keep going online. Then the plan B students and teachers, they will transition. Now, as it gets to some of the more specialized courses in middle school and our high school, it won't be as clean as that, just because the master schedule at the high school levels are much more complex. And we have a lot of teachers that are the only teacher in the school that teaches that course. So, you know, we have been, so in that sense, we may have teachers that will be teaching in both models because they are the only sole teacher. So that's where, but that's how we are also able to say that students, you will be able to get the courses that you registered for and that you will be getting the same thing. Because if I'm a project Lead the Way teacher, or if I'm an IB teacher or an AP teacher, that what might happen is within the number of sections that I'm responsible for teaching, that I might have a section that I'll be teaching the students in the virtual academy, while the sections I might be teaching are the students that, just because I'm the only teacher. And this is why, again, that we're really, you know, emphasizing the importance of our teachers and their expertise, that we could not just create a canned program. So we're not only trying to customize our students, but we're also understanding we also have to be mindful the customization for our teachers, because they provide the customization for our students. So there will be for students a more clear continuation of the program in the virtual academy or plan B, but the teachers may have to be flexible in both to meet the needs of the students.
I guess my question in the spirit of, and you don't have to answer this now, but maybe something to think about and based on what you just said, for at least the elementary schools, if we decide tonight to go to the 9 weeks, would it make sense to to just offer everything through virtual academy and pull it together rather than offer two, if everybody's going to be doing the same thing for 9 weeks, and then they transition out? So just a thought, you don't have to answer that. Yeah. Second thing, and this is does it matter that teachers won't have their new computers in time for their professional development? So that's a question Don't have to answer, just a question I have. But the third one, and this affects my decisions tonight, is in our summer schools, have we learned anything about where our kids are and how much learning loss has occurred since last March? Because that might, and how will that affect how we start school and what kind of supplemental resources will our kids need to catch them up? Because I kick that over to the learning labs, the supplemental learning labs. So it's a question about how much learning loss are we seeing and what kind of accommodations are we looking at to catch kids up?
So Ms. Hauser, we actually have a meeting scheduled for this week to really start to look at some data from our summer now that it's been going on for a few weeks. And we have some assessment data. So we actually have a meeting set up to start looking at that data and to start digging that deeper. So we will be able to provide you an update at a later date.
Thank you, Dr. Dawson. Ms. Smiley?
I know we're short on time. I have a lot of other questions. I'm going to just keep it to one clarification around the move to stay in Plan C for the first 9 weeks, which makes sense to me from a sort of scheduling, instructional planning standpoint. Are we saying potentially piloting smaller groups returning sooner than that, though, assuming all the metrics look good to allow people back into buildings?
Yes. When we come in 4 weeks from now, if the data are trending in the right direction, that's something we would definitely.
Because I really do love that idea, by the way, of moving with smaller groups.
That's helpful clarity for me as well.
Yeah.
So are there any other pressing questions that just absolutely need to be asked before we give guidance on these 3 issues tonight? I realize we could be here all night with all of the questions we probably have that we've heard from our friends and our constituents, and I recognize that everyone probably has lots and lots of questions, but also want to just keep in mind that we probably really do need to wrap up by 10:30.
Right. So Madam Chair, the first item of business was the matter of the 9 weeks. Is that correct?
That is correct, Madam Vice.
All right. I wanted to be clear because I would like to make that motion because I want to say, I haven't said, returning to school presents the biggest risk for the spread of COVID-19, and I believe it's incumbent upon all of us to do our part. And so we'll be doing our part to kind of flatten that curve so we can, our students can gradually come back into the classroom. So with that said, I believe I'd like to make the motion that we accept Dr. Felder's recommendation of 9 weeks, starting school remotely for 9 weeks.
Second.
I have a motion from Ms. Stevens and a second from Ms. Doyle. Is that right? Ms. Hauser?
Can I ask for an amendment to that? And I'd like to add Sarah's comment as an amendment, that with the option of bringing back smaller groups as the disease progression allows.
I guess no.
Bringing back smaller groups sooner as the disease progression. Is
there a second to the motion for the amendment to the original motion?
Second.
We have a motion from Ms. Hauser to amend the original motion and a second from Mr. Atherton. Ms. Stevens? You are on mute, Ms. Stevens, and I want to make sure
I am, and I'm thinking if I'm going to vote for this or not, because
you want me to come back around to you?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Smiley.
I mean, I will vote yes on that. I think if we can bring kids back sooner, then we should.
Okay, Ms. Moore.
Yes.
Ms. Hauser.
Yes.
Ms. Doyle.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Atherton.
Yes.
This is getting confusing.
Ms. Stevens,
And I will
I'm kind
tell
of,
you, my hesitation was that I don't want staff rushing with this. If the curve flattens, it does, and then our students can come back. And I did say that in my comment. But I will certainly support it, but I believe 9 weeks is what we need. Thanks a lot.
I will support it also. And with the request, Dr. Felder, that you work with staff to make sure that the staff members who would be in the building teaching those students are comfortable being there.
Right.
So the amendment to the motion passes. Do we now need to vote on?
Yes.
Are we good? Okay, so now we need to vote on
The underlying motion.
The underlying motion. So we had a motion from Ms. Stevens that is now amended, and we had a second from Mr. Atherton to begin with? No, Ms. Smiley to begin with.
Ms. Doyle.
Ms. Doyle, I'm sorry, everyone. At this point, I've gone through everyone so many times. Okay. So Mr. Atherton.
Yes.
Ms. Doyle?
Yes.
Ms. Doyle?
Yes.
Ms. Hauser?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
For those who are confused after listening to all of that, we have just passed a motion to stay in remote learning for the first 9 weeks with the possibility, if all of the trends are correct, to have very small cohorts of students sort of pilot a way back with teachers who are comfortable if all of the metrics look correct in the meantime. Okay, so the next issue that we need to take action on is guidance around supervised learning labs and whether we are comfortable with the possibility of those operating in our buildings. These would not be hosted by our certified staff.
And I believe.
Ms. Smiley and then Mr. Atherton.
Well, in terms of hosting them in our buildings, I'd have questions about how many people and ventilated spaces. I just have a lot of questions about that, but I'm open to the idea of exploring it, I guess. I think it is really important for us to provide free places for children to go who are particularly high need. So parts of the county that can't be served by cell service and hotspots, kids who are receiving free and reduced price lunch and their parents are essential workers. I'm not sure which categories, which kids, but like the highest need kids, we have to find ways to get them for free spaces. So that's my hope in terms of the outcome of these learning labs.
So Dr. Felder, as a point of clarity, do you just need guidance that we're open to exploring these?
Yes.
Okay, so Ms. Smiley, you are comfortable with that? I'm not sure we need really a motion around this. I think we just need a general consensus.
Right.
So
the thinking is, I'm sorry, Mrs. McKenzie, if I could just add, thinking is that we would come back at the August 10th board meeting with an update and a more fleshed out plan.
Wonderful. So Mr. Atherton?
Yeah, the only other comment I had was it's not just our schools. They're looking at other organizations. So I just want to make sure everybody knows that it would be in addition. So there's that possibility. So
it's written down.
Okay, so Mr. Atherton, are you in agreement? Yes. Ms. Moore, are you in agreement to explore this option more?
Yes.
Ms. Doyle?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Hauser?
Yes.
So am I. We're clear on that one, Dr. Felder. And then the last one was around our metrics for reopening and forming a joint committee with Chapel Hill Carborough City Schools. Does that capture fully what you need, Dr. Felder?
Yes. Oh, and that is to include the to Ms. Stewart with regards to other metrics to consider, looking at zip codes, looking at specific to Orange County, Northern Orange County. So, but you did hear about the metrics that are proposed thus far, and just need to know if we can move forward.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have a motion around that?
Sure, Madam Chair, I move that we move on item number 3.
I have a motion from Ms. Stevens. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Ms. Smiley. Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley?
Yes.
Ms. Moore?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Ms. Hauser?
Sure. Yes.
Ms. Doyle?
That was
And Mr. Atherton?
Yes, we need deterministic data.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you, everyone. So I'm going to move quickly into just a quick board housekeeping thing. We have been discussing committees, and we have decided to sort of move our discussions this year around student achievement into our board meetings. And so the 3 committees that we've proposed are policy and budget, which are always standing meetings, and also forming thanks to the fabulous recommendation of Board Member Smiley, a community engagement committee of the board. And we just need to vote on the approval of those committees so that I can take the information you've given me and create a calendar for us. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve these committees.
Second.
I have a motion from Ms. Smiley, a second from Ms. Stevens. Mr. Atherton?
Yes.
Ms. Doyle?
Yes.
Ms. Hauser?
yes.
I vote yes. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Then that motion approves, and those are our 3 standing committees, and we'll provide more information to the public when we have a little bit more time. I just want to quickly have a few final thoughts. I want to thank our staff for working around the clock to prepare for the upcoming school year. And for this meeting tonight, thank you to the community for reaching out with a willingness to collaborate with Orange County Schools during this time. I appreciate everyone's patience as we work to finalize the details for the upcoming year and roll out our communication. We understand that families and employees may still have more questions, and district staff is working nearly continuously to be able to provide those answers as quickly as possible to you. On a personal note, I've seen some negativity directed towards our teachers about our buildings being closed. So I just want to be perfectly clear tonight that any frustration about these decisions should be directed towards the school board. We have requested our teachers honest feedback because we value it very highly, but any decisions made are the responsibility of the board. So I would just respectfully request that the incredible work of our teachers and what they're doing to prepare for the upcoming year, and sort of give them, let the board answer decisions about reopening. To that same end, the quickest way for us to be able to reopen is for everyone in the community to wear a mask every time we leave our homes, wash our hands frequently, and physically distance whenever possible. We must work together to bring the case numbers down so we can get our buildings open. So with that, I will take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
I've got a motion from Ms. Hauser, and I'll take that as a second from Ms. Smiley, if that is appropriate.
Yep.
Okay, so Mr. Atherton.
Yes.
Ms. Doyle.
Yes.
Hauser.
Yes.
I vote yes. Ms. Moore.
Yes.
Ms. Smiley.
Yes.
Ms. Stevens.
Yes.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Good night.
Night.